Hey guys, can you hear me? Because I switched earbuds. The sound is better with these, but I don't know if the microphone is good. Well, nobody's telling me I'm muted, so I guess that's a good sign. I don't know. I don't know nothing. You guys gotta tell me things. Okay, good. You can hear me. Workers trapped in Yarmouth, Massachusetts, trench collapse. Emergency rescue crews in South Yarmouth are responding to a dangerous trench collapse at a job site. Ooh. Public to avoid the area as crews work to reach trapped workers. At least one worker has already been pulled out and is receiving life-saving treatment. The exact number still trapped is unclear. Yikes. So the other... That's weird. Why can't everything be consistent? So the sound is better with these, but the audio, I hear better. I mean, the audio sounds better with these. These are little cheap ones that I got from Temu, and the sound is actually... Okay, can you hear me now? No, I don't care. I just won't talk. Are you gonna turn the sound on? Again with the no sound. It's not me. It's the court. Oh wait, no, it's not. It is me. No, it's the court because I just said
I would ask the public.
it's the court. I had it muted, but now it's not muted.
Do you all need
And
No.
Okay.
And before Detective, you're still under oath. Before I press play on
it's the
this,
court.
for the record, can you just indicate what the date is of this
Sound,
and time?
please.
It's November the 19th, 2021 at 9:12 p.m.
And for the record,
Why is there no sound? What is happening? I just heard sound earlier. I don't know if it's my computer or what. What the fudge? Man. It's gotta be the court. Where did court TV go? I don't see how sound. Dang it. Why don't I have sound? Okay, I don't know why I can't hear it. You can hear it? I can't hear anything. I can't hear it. I don't like this. I want to hear it. Why can't I hear it? What the fudge? These were working a minute ago. What the? I'm gonna get mad now. It's ticking me off. I don't hear sound. Guys, I'm gonna cry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I am Judge Sonia Brown, the presiding judge for this criminal jury trial for the state of Georgia versus Matthew Scott Lanz, case number 229000922. Again, present in the open courtroom of the court, the clerk, the court reporter, Mr. Lanz is represented by Attorney Jimmy Berry, and the state is represented by Assistant District Attorneys Green and Horowitz. Anything we need to put on the record before we proceed?
Just one thing, Judge, after this witness, they're going to put up, a witness, he took swabs, I think it was you that took swabs. When the state finishes, there's about a 5-minute video that I have not seen.
Okay.
If we could take 5 minutes and let you view that to see if we can consent to it.
Sure, of course,
Thank
of
you.
course. Anything else?
No, Judge.
All right, you may proceed, Attorney Horowitz.
And Judge, right before the break, I had admitted State's Exhibit 466,
66.
which is the interview with Scott and Teresa Lanz. So I would ask the public at this time,
You may.
and I'm ready.
Do you all need the lights turned?
No.
Okay.
And before, Detective, you're still under oath, before I press play on this, for the record, can you just indicate what the date is of this interview and time?
It's November the 19th, 2021 at 9:12 p.m.
And for the record, who is in this video before it starts playing?
That's Matthew Lanz's parents, Scott and Teresa Lanz.
Who's on the right, who's on the left?
Teresa's on the left and Scott is on the right.
Is this a different witness?
Now, for the record, I'm going to start State Exhibit 466 at 9:12 and 50 seconds p.m.
Matthew was found in people's houses down in Sandy Springs. When an officer showed up, he was in someone's house. They pulled out an identity stab, Sandy Springs officer. Sandy Springs officer is expected to survive. Matthew was shot at least twice, but he's fine. He was treated at a hospital. He's expected to make it full recovery. But I just want to let you know that now, okay? You want me to give you a minute and step out? Because, separate investigation as far as that goes. But obviously, in light of where this double homicide happened, and that he came in someone's home with a weapon and hurt another police officer, it obviously raised our suspicion that he picked this one.
You're sure it's Matthew?
Yeah,
Do you have ID on him, his name?
we heard the body came and all that stuff. He was in someone's house, more than one house down there in Sandy Springs. And we showed up and kind of talked to him, and with that knife, he stabbed off the back of that thing. Easy, that's the guy. Well, we just saw him across the house. We went down there to meet the Sandy Springs detectives.
You
Yeah, I feel bad for him too.
What's going on in my head? Sorry.
I cannot. I can't believe it. I'm sick.
Not that if you need a minute to talk on yourself or you just need 5 or 10 minutes before a walk.
They came to our house, treated me like a criminal. They brought me outside and put my hands behind my back. They ripped me.
The police that came to your house?
Yes! Do you have a weapon?
That's it. I just know that it seems that way. No one just thinks you're a criminal. But we also don't know who's inside or what, especially when you're an officer, you just gotta say, they're just very extra careful about how they proceed with that.
And you said he's okay.
He is okay. He went to the hospital, he treated the others. The officer's fine. The officer's good. The officer's still in the hospital. He's like, Matthew, he's in the hospital. He's gonna be fine.
You got shot. Matthew got shot.
Yeah, the police officer who was there, did fire himself and he was shot. Like I said, we weren't there. I can't tell you the marriage a little bit of detail because we were already filed as having the same strength. We could go after the traffic arrow. Okay, what happened this morning, that information we have from that. I'm sure they still have a lot of work to do as far as the investigation goes. But we were after this house with this happened this morning.
Do you
We
have
had a suspicion about Matthew prior to that. So the house where that fellow was at, we understand there was a connection there with your others.
Yes.
Okay. We heard about that incident. Okay. We heard that there was a brother. We didn't really know who Matthew was at that time. We were investigating this stuff homicide. But we there was another suspect. And then this morning we got a call that one of the things we found out who Matthew was and where he lived in relation to his homicide. They called us and said, hey, you might want to know about this because how close it was now to someone else's home and having harm with weapon and staff was there. So obviously when we're investigating homicide, that is something we have to follow up on. We have to look into that aspect, okay? So that's how Detective Jackson and I did that.
How could he be mentally disturbed? He's been seeing a psychiatrist since the thing that happened with Austin because we were concerned they were so close. And we went together at first.
And honestly, we've never met. I've never met Matthew. I've never had any communication with Matthew prior. I knew nothing about who Matthew was, what his life is like as still had. I never even knew anything about whatever happened at that house with your other son previously until yesterday. But this is the first time this has come to light to me. So that's why, obviously, we're here. Another thing that concerned us was that about the firearm that we had. And I guess from what we're being told, we may have taken from him for whatever more told for verdicts. And we appreciate that.
We told him that, after what happened to Austin, he could not have any gun.
We back up once down. When they were younger, well, I don't remember if I bought or who bought them, but we have one left. And we used to arrange to shoot the long gun, I don't remember what it is. And then they purchased 2 handguns, separate, like 4 together or something. I never really got a true story out of that. And after Austin incident, we found them.
We didn't even know they were in the house.
We never had any idea. And that's, let me rephrase this a little bit. When I said, like, we never met before, I never knew anything about that, we never knew anything about your son. we're not here to have you. Good stuff, you guys. We just trying to get through the field, we want to get through the stuff background. That look, the guys are now locked up in a safe. We bought a safe after we took them away. Put them in a safe, did them in the closet. Matthew always asks about his guns. Don't worry about you guys, you're not getting them back. Maybe one day I'll go with you, but not right now, because I'm just not a gun person at all. I saw him every week. He'd come home when I go to Athens, and we'd like, oh, we got dinner, and I knew he was going to be tough with his brother's loss. We knew he had something going on in his head that we couldn't figure out. We couldn't figure out Austin either. We thought we were doing the right thing. I don't know we will, but Matthew wasn't right. We were going to pull him out of we were going to bring him back home, let him go to home, be around him more, and he didn't want to do that. He said, I'm fine. So he's got some issues. After all the gun malarkey, he went out and bought a gun. He told us October.
Yeah, what we didn't know this until yesterday.
Well, we went to see him. There was a gun in the park. We said, what's up with him? That is this. Where did you get this? I bought it at Athens gun store.
Gun range.
Whatever, I don't remember. And I said, well, you can't have this. He said, Dad, it's personal property, it's mine, he's defiant, he doesn't like law, he doesn't like rules.
He needs to protect himself. For some reason,
There's a fear that somebody's out to get him.
with this. He said, that's what he says every time we say, why do you think you need something to protect yourself? Because everybody should have something to protect themselves.
What would it come back clean on him?
I took the gun back to our house, and I just showed, I told folks what they were listening more than how the fact was. And, you know, there's a connection, my guess is, I don't know.
Or he could have got it illegally.
I went first because after we found out about the neighbors, I started trying to call him, you know, to tell him before he saw it or heard it. And he wasn't answering his phone. And I continued to text him and call him.
Is it right now, go straight to voicemail,
And I think that it was showing blue yesterday.
Really?
Today it's been showing green.
I didn't think they looked at family members when they did a background check on you.
So I assumed it was either dead or off. But yesterday it was blue. And so I probably got there about 2:30 or so, and I unlocked the door, and the chain was on. And I was, you know, yelling through the door, because I could see his bedroom door was closed. And I kept saying, Matthew, you know, come to the door. And I waited and waited. And so I kept trying to push the chain just to break it. And about the time that I finally
It would make sense.
to unscrew out of the wall,
It would make a lot of
walked
sense.
out of his bedroom. And the gun was right by the bed. And I said, what is this? He said, well, I thought somebody was breaking into the apartment. And I said, well, why would you think that? I was screaming, Matthew's mom. And, you know, this is 2:30 in the afternoon, and he's in a dance sleep in his bed when he's supposed to be in class.
You all have a gun. I haven't been here. If you're a guy, that's a gun. You're, you know, sure there now, everything. I just follow exactly where I put it. Not having secrets.
But that is why we were there yesterday, because I was concerned that I could be in touch with him. And and wanted to tell him about what happened.
Do you have any suspicions?
I had no, there was no working Wednesday night or whatever that occurred, was Wednesday night? Yes. Wednesday night, my dogs bark at everything. I mean, they bark when I go outside, I can't find anything. We didn't hear a sound. And so I have no idea what happened. If he was there, he was not in the house.
They should,
No.
but I don't know if it does.
When you heard about what happened to you, your neighbor's house, is there any suspicion that you is involved?
I would never, we never even met the new people. Never even met them. And Matthew knew that the other people moved out long ago. It never occurred to me that he had anything to do with this.
The first reaction when I talked to Matthew, he said that you asked him if he killed neighbors.
Well,
Well, here's, let me back up. I speak to him pretty regularly, trying to keep the spirits up, let him know I'm coming, we're gonna do something, blah, blah, blah. He called me Tuesday night. I spoke to him Tuesday night. How you doing, buddy? Everything okay? School? What are you doing? He said, I was at the gas station filling up my car. Filling up his car. And he was going to come home with his computer. And I said, great, you pick me up at the airport tomorrow, which was Wednesday night. Yeah, Wednesday, I talked to him. Pick me up at the airport at 6 o'clock. Yes. He said, the meeting was
What
going
was
on.
that? What was she doing?
She knew not to go out and he home. He never came in the house. He came home. He did unlock the door. She didn't know he ever came home. He told us that he went home, but never went inside the house. That's exactly what he told us, and that's what I said. The next day, when this occurred, I said, Teresa, I'm just nervous. Matthew told me he was coming home. Maybe he didn't come home, but we ought to call and see what's up with him.
You saw him, you go out to the department.
Yeah.
my dog picked him up from the airport. Cause I tried to get him to come back home with me, and he said, no, I don't need to come home.
His place now.
Yes,
He had it for a while.
yes, he moved in August,
Like I said, you've been over there multiple times.
Yeah.
Right?
yes.
How does he react now? Is it neat and orderly, or is that state of chaos?
No, it's always very neat and clean and orderly.
When you saw him, I guess that was Thursday, or some Thursday, was his appearance? Was he drunk? Was he?
He was not drunk.
Out of it, was he saying weird things? He always says weird things. So he would say weird things. Like when he was just really going on, like he was just really.
When he got up at 2:30 in the afternoon, you could tell he had been sleeping very hard because, his eyes were swollen and he was kind of disoriented at first. And I said, what are you doing in bed? Why aren't you in class? And he said, I was just really tired. And I said, why are you so tired? I can't remember what he said. But I probably said, Daddy said you were coming home. I said, well, you weren't at home. I said, what is going on? And at first he told me that he came in the house. And I said, there's no way he came in the house because the dogs would bark and flip out. I said, there's no way you were inside our house. And I said, and we have a thing that we latch and lock it. And I said, yeah. I said, how could you have gotten in? And then later he said, no, I didn't. And so I didn't really believe that he actually was anywhere in the vicinity. And that's when I said, well, you know, of course, I saw the gun, and we had that conversation, and I said, did you have anything to do with what happened to the neighbors? And that's when I told him, you know, what happened to the neighbors. He didn't respond immediately. Like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I think he was just still not alert. I mean, you could tell.
Was he wasn't alert because he was still trying to wake up, or was he was all kind of out?
Did he think he was at his parents' house and he was doing it to his parents? I don't know. I don't know how background checks work. Do they look to see if there's any gun violence in your family? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly can't answer that. I don't know if it was that, you know, he was just not quite, it was later on, you know, after I'd been there for quite a while before Scott came, he was more alert and talking, you know, more clearly.
Did he ever give you actual yes or no response about the gas and
He said, I did not murder anybody.
So other than him kind of sleeping, like, is that the usual from the spiritual 30 years now? We watching him on the weekend, we try to get your classes going. How about we say figure out the weekend, that's what 2:30.
Yeah, not that late, no.
So, it's a little unusual from the sleeping late. He looked tired, we woke up, everything in the car seemed normal.
Yeah.
Who actually did it? You wouldn't hear from her, that's why Teresa had called me today. I said, get Matthew in the car, bring him to our house. And he refused to go home. That's when she called me and said, I'm here, blah, 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 he's off his rocker. I'm going to have everybody pick him from the airport, you go. So I went and felt the same thing you talked about, and asked point blank, were you involved in it? It was not a yes or no, it was all answers, really made no sense. And if you talk to them long enough, somebody has, they may get a sense of these, I don't know. So, we said, let's go. You're going, Mom's going, with them Ryan, because she picked me up, and I'll drive you and I. He said, Dad, I want to stay here. I said, why? Why would you want to come home? You were going to come home last night. You did. He said, I just want to stay, I got classes, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay. But I'm taking the gun. And I went and got it. And said, Dad, possession is possession. I'm the owner. You can't do this to me. Blah, blah, blah. And I go, give her a flip. I'm taking the gun. You can have bullets, but I'm taking the freaking gun. Well,
no, he said you should take the bullet too. He told you should take the bullet too.
I just wanted the gun. I took his bullets. And I can't use them. I was going to take it or anything. I'm not going to say I was. What I thought was, we're going to take them to himself. Or somebody else. No, I know you're not. No, that's terrible to think. It's terrible to say, but his mindset was completely.
But you would think if his psychiatrist that he's been seeing every 2 weeks because we wanted him to continue to meet with him, you know, because of what happened to Austin. Because he said, you know, we asked him, would you like to continue to go? And he said, yeah, it would be good for me. I mean, well, maybe because he's 22 years old that he can't tell us anything, I don't know.
I know you said you had it. Absolutely. Do you have any idea what kind of happens?
I have no idea.
But you know what color it was?
Black.
Did it look like kind of like what I said? Where you did that block? This is, yes, no, not a block. Because the other two guys we have are blocks. This one was, It's shaped like this, it's shaped like that same size,
But
yeah.
the hole is not that big.
Okay.
It's just about that wide.
It's okay, I just think that 88, 99 caliber. I was just curious. So, he had the bullets at his house, yes. Did you ever see the bullets? Yes. Can you describe those to me? They were about, yeah, you were, if I use the word casing, you know, you got showcase. What color was the showcase? Gold. The showcase was gold. She didn't have any other camera with it, something like that. Because the gun and the ammo was in his drawer. It was on the floor next to the bed.
When I got there.
After 3 hours, he put it in his little drawer box. Do you have any other, magazines there?
He had two, one on the side and one in it. Well, it was not in it, it was just kind of hanging out.
Does it have the same ammo in it? That's, yeah, I think it was the same. But I said, no, how you are in, he said, hey, maybe.
I don't know.
I said, how many are missing? Oh,
He
yeah.
said he shot 5 or 6 rounds at the gun range.
He said he fired 5 or 6 shots at the gun range. I showed you, a bullet, would you be able to bring that? I know that's, did you ever see anything on that was kind of like this?
The bullets aren't that big.
Okay, and he said that's no wrong on that, I don't think it was, okay, so, alright.
No, little.
Now, I know you said you've seen a psychiatrist, do you actually think that exists?
I mean, I told the psychiatrist that, you know, I thought that he was either bipolar or schizophrenic, you know, of the episodes that we've seen over the last few years.
So is that 50 years now?
About 2.5.
I'm sorry. I don't think it's not there yet.
Yeah.
You don't have the right words on the town. So a couple years.
Yeah.
So like high school years?
No, he was always an excellent straight A student, went to magnet school in Kennesaw Mountain, athlete, played lacrosse, never got in trouble, never drank, never, you know, it was the good crowd kids. When he went to Georgia, I wanted him to, get a fraternity to help him, because he was kind of a geek, you know, he was in computer labs at school, and I just thought it would help him socially at Georgia. And you know, I was sitting in this dorm or apartment all day on the computer. So I said, you know, I think it will help you socially, you'll really enjoy it. My daughter went down to the store and loved it. And so I think that was the beginning of the end. Of course, he got in there and started drinking and smoking, and Lord only knows what else those guys do. And, you know, I think he started smoking pot, he had never smoked pot before. And the kind of crap that those kids get now, I don't know what's in it, but it's not the kind of pot from way I went. And so we started seeing, you know, his grades started plummeting after the first semester, and behavior, yes.
Did he show that to school this time? Yes.
Yes.
If he's mentally ill and he, what's the word, pledges a fraternity and they haze him, that's not going to help him socially. That's going to push him over the edge.
Yes, he's been struggling, yes.
Yeah, they were smoking, they were doing something at some point, you know, probably nervous, at the house, and it got him way off track. I think it even happened again, you know, he had something the other night.
Yes, as I wasn't having him on now.
And the counselor, when he went around
he got, had to go through the code of conduct for school, because it was on, their fraternity house was on school campus, not off campus. So when they contacted the, fraternity council to tell them what had happened, they in turn contacted school. So then the school board called me and said, you know, I'm calling to let you know there's an incident at his fraternity house. He is on his way home, and, so we got an attorney to get him back in school, because they wanted to keep him out, like, 2 semesters, like a whole year. And we just felt like, you know, the kid's never been in trouble. He got so high, he didn't know what he was doing. He needs a second chance, because he's just a great student, great kid.
But it was hard, it was Clark County police.
Yeah, so I drove him to the police station
Turned himself
and
in.
turned himself in. Because of the time. That's what the attorney recommended.
And you think that incident was, because he got too high, or was
Yeah.
strong stuff, or do you think that was the beginning of maybe?
I think he was smoking a tremendous amount of pot at that time. And I think that was the beginning of all these episodes. And, we didn't know this, but another episode occurred before that, when he was living in a dorm. They said he was running through the dorm and banged his head against the wall when he was real high one time. And, the people that come to check on what yeah, but they didn't ever notify us because they didn't think that they.
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah.
I'd say the same. That he quit smoking because he was on, you know, to do weekly work,
He had to.
work every Sunday went to the police station. So, I
Yeah.
so I think he was straight for a period of time, and then once he completed that, kind of slid back to the old days. The other like academic probation for that stuff. Yeah, so struggling in school, but still maintaining grades. He wouldn't tell us.
Well.
He's become really defiant, right, really.
He
I think he'll, go ahead.
he came home, you know, when it happened in the fall of his sophomore year, that's when that happened, like in October at the fraternity. And so he stayed home through, did he start back the spring? Oh, yeah, that's when COVID hit, so he had to stay home. He was allowed to go back to school and take classes, but he had to do it online because that's when COVID hit. So he was home that whole year, and then that summer, and then this, it's his junior year, and so he went back. Well, we got an apartment in April, because he couldn't find any community service in Cobb County for his program. Yeah.
So he was full host scholarship for 2 quarters. Came out of Kennesaw High School with a 4 point something. And went to Georgia, had a 3.6 and a 3.5, and joined the fraternity almost down. And my guess is today, he had 1 good quarter, because we said you gotta straighten up, we're paying a lot of money. And I think this quarter will be his worst this major.
It was engineering, and he switched it to cognitive science.
Because you had this,
There's a new major, I think, at Georgia, but,
if bullet matches, he's not. I'll be honest with you, we will be testing. We will be testing that.
know how many times the people were shot? Both of them, each one.
Let me ask you this. Do you guys know where in the house bodies were?
I talked to the grandparents down the street briefly, and they told me that the authorities told them they were sitting on the sofa. They were found sitting on the sofa.
You know what room they were in?
I'm assuming that must be their den.
Yeah, war.
Do I have the?
That's how you tell them that.
I
Did you ever tell them what room they were in?
don't know. All the that.
All I want to know was you called, yes.
I don't know where,
And I know you say that doing strange things, seeing strange things. There's something specific that's kind of like a repetitive behavior with him, whether he presence or uneasy. If you ever know about a specific thing, if there's something specific, dictate on,
it
or
takes on having to have a weapon to protect himself, especially since what happened to Austin.
is this like a everyday thing, or is it kind of comes and goes, or he has good weeks and bad weeks, or as far as whatever's going on with him?
Well, when he came home and he asked to see where the guns were, I was the only one who knew where the key was. And so Daddy said, I don't know where the key is, but I will get Mom to go get it, and I will show you where the guns are, that they're safe, and they're put away, and they'll be here for whenever. And so I always got the key, and, unlocked it. He came in, and he and Scott sat there, and he showed him, everything was in the safe, and
No, you can't take it. Just lock back up, and I'll be here when we think it's time to do something else. So he's pretty big on protecting himself. Did he ever express anything of why he needed protection? Like a specific threat that he thought was? I think in the college there were folks out to get him. And I think it was on the devilish, demonic side of his mind that he was hearing things, seeing things, believing things that weren't true, that led him to believe, somebody's gonna come get me. I don't know.
well, yes, one day when I was in Athens, he drove me past this temple that he said were devil worshippers. Because he said he was sitting outside one night, and he heard a woman or somebody scream to the top of their lungs. And we said, where do you think that was coming from? He said, I think it was coming from the demonic temple.
It was amazing. It's on the sidewalks, right? That's what it was. He drove me to it. I said, are you kidding me? He told me that on the phone when I was in D.C. And the next time I saw him, said, tell me where all this happened. And it was 3/8 of a mile from his house. And I said, something doesn't make sense. If you scream as loud as you can at that place, there's no way you're back to your place. So I was that in his mind? He believes things that I don't think would ever have heard from that. For me, 3 months ago, yeah. Did you ever say anything about that house that happened? Even before the house that happened, was there anything that other house talked about? Yeah, the previous people who lived there.
When that was all going on with Austin, I would ask him, I would say, do you see any of this that Austin thinks he sees and that's going on? Have you ever seen a flashing lights at Austin? He said, I've seen the lights. And he said, I think that one or both of them are messing with Austin. He said, I've never seen them in person. He said, but, I think that they are messing Austin.
So, did Austin have a fixation on that house?
Well, that is,
He was putting things in the mailboxes, he believed that they were going in the bathroom and posing for him and turning the lights on and off and shining the laser in our house and just things that aren't normal, right? And God forbid, we did everything good for Austin, and he had similar issues with the dark side. It's all I can say. But living in the real world. Now, I know you said that, you said, yes, I saw that, and the license over there, I think they were messing with Austin and stuff. Did he say anything about that house recently?
no, haven't mentioned the house. Not at all.
Because I purposely, they sold their house a month after
They sold the house,
lockdown.
Yeah. and the people, I think, was in
September.
maybe somewhere around that.
So I made a point to tell him that those people, the old people are gone, and new people are moved in that house. Because Matt had all about the light,
He did?
about the previous owners messing with Austin too. Like I said, I was very familiar with what happened with Austin and that house prior to that. It's new to me, so today. And I can tell Matthew was very, we asked him, what happened to your brother in the house? Why did he go over there that one time that their house got come to? I don't know what happened to my brother. He seemed like he's very, I don't want to talk about him. But then he would say, yeah, Mason, that's the life, because of life, it's weird like that all the time. The thing that, I guess, diesel, that's what I was concerned for us, was that, the new residents in the window, flashing Christmas tree. That go on and off, just flashlight. And Austin told us he's out in the backyard, Matt told us he's out in the backyard, he said, that's his light. More shining from the neighbors.
So he told y'all he was there.
He told us he came to your house. Sat in the car for like 15 minutes. Took like an hour and a half, essentially. Walked around the backyard, smoked a cigarette, kind of hanging out there for a little bit. And he said,
And did he say he came in the house?
he said he never went here.
Why did he tell us that he came in our house?
He said he said he got a bad feeling, took a bad feeling in the air. And that spooked him. But the fixation of the license, but we were trying to kind of understand, but if I had a Austin,
He
what
was
they
saying that he saw flashing lights in the backyard.
that's all like, burger, his burger.
Well, I was trying to figure out if he was really there, because I said, were there any lights on in the house behind us, if you were here? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, were they on upstairs or downstairs? Because they left, I think, the lights on, it wasn't everything exactly like we found it. And from what I've seen, it's the downstairs lights that are on, not the upstairs. And he said, he used that term, those demonic lights were on. And I said, what? And he said, those demonic lights.
This is when he said that happened, the part
Yeah.
after this happened,
Yes,
so he told you, after the demonic.
yes. And I said,
Why would he, what's the point in telling him about the Christmas lights? No, he didn't tell us about the Christmas lights, I'm telling you that. We're talking about.
Didn't I say demonic earlier looking at him?
So that was something we were thinking, like,
He was just flashing lights.
we were trying to think,
Inside the house, they were flashing Christmas tree.
yeah. And he called it the demonic lights to me. And that's why I didn't believe he was really there. Honest to God, I just believe he was just not there. I said, after you came home, and you said you came in the house, the dogs were heard you, the dogs were barked, the light we have on the lights that automatically comes on when you walk in.
Right.
So I went home, I'm a very light sleeper. I said, there's no way you were inside our house. And he said, yeah, you're right, I didn't come in the house.
Yeah, I believe you.
So, you know, one minute he tells me one thing and the next minute he tells me another, so I just didn't know what to believe. And that's when I probably said, did you have anything to do with those people?
Did you know he was up in Metro Atlanta?
Oh, I have no idea.
Did you know he was up in Metro Atlanta today?
No.
Did you think he was doing it after? I didn't know he could have had him back.
No, I'm not.
Or just, yeah, did you think he was doing that?
Yes, because we said when we left, you know, buddy, if you stay here, you got to go to class. You know, don't feel online, go in person. And he said, I am. So I texted him this morning tonight, I thought the classes were 11, and said, you up? And he didn't respond. And then I tried calling him, and he just went straight to voicemail. And I thought, oh God, he's still asleep. He did not get up. And so I called him again at some point, and it went straight to voicemail again. And so I told Scott, I said, you know, I guess we need to go back tomorrow and see what the world's going on.
I just wasn't sure if he called you today.
No. We told him that if he didn't come home last night, just to stay and come home Tuesday when classes were over. But he never said any other negative things about that house. You know, once that was all over and done, and he said something to me. I can't remember exactly what we're talking about, but he said, no, I don't hold a grudge. Austin didn't hold a grudge. I don't hold a grudge. When I said, did you have anything to do with those people? And he said something like, no, I don't hold a grudge.
And when you were explaining about, the previous residents don't live here anymore, you think that seemed like, you know, should that, find that so?
Definitely.
It wasn't just a point in time conversation, it was a conversation about a lot of things. We were, all four, I don't remember when or where, you know, he was always needed that meeting, he know everything you do, and he know everything, right? Matthew was always one that needed information, so he knew what we were doing, he knew if we were going on vacation, if we were gonna do this and that.
But it was in the newspaper, and he knew all the newspaper articles that the guy had moved out the week before Austin broke in there. So he knew that no one was living there. And then the guy put in the media that the girl had moved out way back in October. And we didn't know that. We thought they were both there that whole time.
So it never seemed like you forgot that you had that conversation and forgot that they.
No. I never took a tail line when we were, you know, he knew that, you know, it was for sale. And he knew that the guy had moved out.
He doesn't have to work like that.
No.
So that house and apartment.
No apartment.
So all here.
All cameras.
Old apartment, because pretty nice.
Different than them. So pretty similar.
No.
Freshman friend, it was Mountain, right?
Yeah.
And the freshman in that room together, great kid, he still keeps in touch with him. He had a fraternity incidents, and he got commissioned or de-pledged. So I don't think he has much conversation with them. I don't think he has a lot of friends.
I asked him last night.
Quiet guy, he's a loner. He's just not reserved.
But he wasn't
I
all
like
right.
it, as far as, president, all the understanding of more.
But he never, I don't think he ever, got past the fraternity incident. Socially, I think that, the fraternity told all the fraternity brothers not having to do with him. And I think, that was huge.
435 North Church Street. Apartment 4. Apartment 4. And so, Church. Yeah, it's, Adams, 435 North Church Street. Apartment 4. Yeah, he is very orderly. He does his laundry regularly, it's clean, there's not trash everywhere. He used to cook himself some food, he's now gone off on a little different tangent. Doesn't feel like he's eating. Him and, Oscar.
Yeah. I mean, they were home together for almost 2 years, one guy even to come home his sophomore year. And, Austin was there, all that time. And then Matthew was home until, April.
Did he take it pretty hard afterwards?
We all did.
I can't, so, that would be good to sympathize with you. We're trying to understand what that is, mindset was.
Yeah.
He was too hard on it for a month, few weeks or a month, but that's why every weekend I would go do something with him. Austin,
He had a breakdown, on the way home from Virginia. We had to go up there and I did lie.
We had one last chance to go see Austin at the funeral home before we had cremated. We said, Matt, you have a choice. You would come with us. He wanted to. And I think that did pretty well. Did he seem like he got worse with the delusions or really after?
I mean, he had a physical, crying breakdown in the car, driving home for 10 hours. That's the first time he had just let it all out, and he was just screaming and mad as hell, and crying, and just talking crazy. And we just were like, oh my God, and that's when we, called psychiatrists and said, okay, we come in and all meet and talk.
Other than what happened today, and when I'm in attack, so it's not sure everybody if people want to different violent outbursts. I know we gave him a nice round at the short yeah. But he never assaulted anybody.
Not that we are.
Tried to stab anybody.
Never, never.
I think it's been just in the last 6 to 8 weeks that he's killed it. He killed it. Nothing. I can't go back and know that it's
I think he knows that he's failing and that he is eating away at the pressure. And he told me last night that he had dropped Spanish. And I said, is that been eating away at you? Because you haven't told me and just now telling me. And he said, yes. And I said, are you going to your other classes? Because we weren't convinced that he was going to his classes. And he says, yes, I have. And he says, I'm still over, taking full force, even having
They
dropped.
didn't wake up today and go to 10-1 class. They did, I had to work out to do a 1-1 class. He went in the same terms.
That's insane to me.
We hugged him last night, right?
Yeah.
And said, we love you, get your butt up, go to class, and we'll see you on Friday, because we get class to.
Tuesday.
What?
I'm sorry, Tuesday. You guys are not going to now.
I was there from 2:30 until, we'll start, and we'll fly in until 6:15, and then I had to drive there.
I didn't get there until 9, but we left.
9:30, 10. Is that right? Yeah, 'cause we got home by 11:30.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was right.
Yeah, they, for some reason, he drove up and his car left it and on the side of the road. Well, he stopped. Left his car in the middle of the road.
In the middle of
In a lane, and a hero truck now did it, it's banned, so they just kind of push it over to the side, because it's just in the middle of the road. No, it was that. Yeah, they right on that, Fulton County line. He did, yeah, there was a camera, they had some traffic cameras over there, I seen him get it out, just kind of pacing around, and just walked away. And then next thing I find out, I don't remember how far away, down the road, goes into one house, walks out, and goes into another house, which there are people on at the time.
What?
They told
Gosh.
him we couldn't get out of our house. Started saying some things that they thought were unusual. He wouldn't leave, he walked up the stairs, walked upstairs to their house. They called the police, and that's when the whole incident was answered. God, he lost his mind. And I don't want to know every specific detail. This is kind of what they just stop your car in the middle of the road. We don't have a guy or. Yeah, we don't have a camera or man, we didn't know he just left it there. We had this, they had to do the gym there. Now, the hero truck thing is kind of right that way, but, yeah, James Spring, obviously, just search on the black Lexus that they had. And when I saw it, they had that gym this over.
So he left in the middle of the road, locked.
I don't know where he's going.
What?
We don't know if
What?
there's a mechanical problem or had a gas or like that they found it kind of just.
In the first house, did he just walk in?
I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, I'm not 100% sure, because I'm not doing that investigation. When I was little, there were 2 houses he went into. One of them, I know at least one of them was occupied. And I was when he walked up the stairs, walking around. They were like, I have to get out of here, starts in to pick the cover. They call Sandy Springs, their officer show up. He comes down the stairs. His dad first, he's very kind of cordial and not doing anything unusual. And next thing they pull it out, stabbed the officer several times. And then they had one of the other officers over there, pulling the firearm. And then he shot the guy twice.
Where was he shot?
Just one in the neck, no nose exactly, and one in the neck, shoulder, chest here, neck, transport. But he did receive medical care, and that's really there. You're all stuff. They charged him, they recently had several criminal suspects. They charged him several. So what has he said about the our next
recall, mentioning that venue.
He said that to us, we thought that was unusual, because he never released that. We never released it to the media, as far as the police department. And, I don't know if people may have heard that, if you got here, but he made a comment that, yeah, our neighbor kids is a living room. Kind of, so we can just leave it at that.
I'm pretty sure I told him that someone had broken the window, and that they did tell him that they thought that someone broke in while people were gone. That's what the grandparents told the grandfather, that the authorities told them that they think somebody broke in while they were gone and were in there and surprised him because he said they were just sitting on the sofa. So I might have told him that. Yeah, but I do remember telling him that when it was broken in, that the grandfather thought someone was in there waiting.
And he said, don't touch the lights. And that was his other smoking a cigarette. You could see the lights, testing the light on the corner of his eye. Which obviously were just dictation about the lights. We asked him a question there, like, hey man, when you get your gun, the showcasing, the national serial showcasing in the house, he was probably not.
It's probably.
It's probably not. Like, man, you don't seem very confident in that either. We said something about, like, why do you think this would happen to some of these people? I think they comment, like, they could have been demonic.
Quit growling at her.
Was there enough to not go into specific details, but there's also some things that were very strong. There was some camera footage of some of the work around in their backyard. Some clothing that was similar to what he was wearing today. We asked him about a specific thing. He goes, oh, look, we're not going to get wearing another thing. We were like, so he wasn't wearing the same clothes. Well, because I wasn't wearing that day, we go, which way was it? Because it was the North Face that he was wearing, or whatever, that's what he was wearing today. So he kind of stays there. And then, we came a little upset when we got this kid in the house. You can tell, kind of, put his head down, give her a long pause, stare off.
Yeah, I remember him when I told him that they had a child, and he said, were they okay? And I said, yes, they were okay. I said, but, they found him hiding. He was clearly, upset. Because I remember him saying he's okay.
Love to get his house.
Oh, dear God. He's just, it's for him, he lost his mind. He lost his mind to go into someone's house and then shrink, and you know that for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
He said, officer, yeah.
he's crazy.
We have a charge and with anything that's very serious. But we'll prepare you that it is possible. Keep somebody going. He may possibly go in charge of 2 counts on all sides, several other charges, okay? Like I said, we're still investigating this thing. I just want to prepare you that it is a possibility. From what we've gathered so far, okay?
You'll never come out. We'll put him in jail and he'll never come back.
Crazy guy.
I know he is. Help.
You don't come out. We don't come out. We have started with this thing.
you call an attorney,
That's, I mean,
They're upset because he's gonna be charged.
he's already had criminal charges. Sure. My number's 404 702.
Lady, he killed 2 people. Oh, Spice, you done it now. See, Aunt Judy's not taking up for you. You still with that plane ticket? Hmm? Maybe if you had done something before, it wouldn't come to this. What is she doing? Puking?
For the record, I'm stopping this video at 10:18:20. Detective, you see that both yourself and Detective Stannard exit the interview room. Is that the completion of the interview?
Yes, sir. I think we went back in one more time just to check on it.
But nothing of conversation as to this case, really.
Correct.
So I want to ask you some questions about some of your tape.
Before we go into that, why don't we take a quick break? It's been about an hour and about 15 minutes. Give everyone an opportunity to stretch and get some water, and we'll come back at 2:50, about 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah. If they had maybe done something when they realized something was going on in his head, maybe they could have prevented this when he was getting high and whatever else. They knew stuff that was going on with him. Sleeping all day, not going to class. I still don't understand why that house, like what the deal was with that house.
Sorry, Judge, we look at the video.
And did he think the
Are you
same
all ready
people
to
lived
do
there?
one time?
Was it the house or was it the people? Like, I don't understand. And
We are back
it
on
might
the
never
case
make
State of
sense.
Georgia versus Matthew Scott Lanz, 22-00922. All parties present. You may proceed, ADR.
Detective, so after watching that video video, I want to kind of understand kind of the procedural of events. So on what day was the murder?
The bodies were found on the 18th, with the murder likely occurred the 17th into the 18th.
Now, after speaking with Teresa and Scott, when did they go to Athens?
They went to Athens the 18th, the day that the bodies were found.
Now, during that interview, around what time did Teresa make it to Athens?
She said she left about noon and arrived in Athens around 2:30 in the afternoon.
Now, what about Scott?
I don't recall an exact time, but Teresa was already there, and she said she called him at the airport, and the daughter picked him up at the airport and got him straight there.
Now, what were some of the big takeaways of the interview that you had with Teresa and Scott?
The first thing that struck me was the fact that Teresa did think to drive over 2 hours to Athens the same day, the 18th. And the fact that she had asked her son if it had anything to do with the neighbors being murdered.
And was anything about the gun significant to you?
Yeah, first off, the fact that they decided they needed to take the gun from their son, because as Mr. Scott said, he thought he might be suicidal or homicidal or somebody else. And then Matthew told them that he fired 5 or 6 rounds at the range, which was consistent with the number of rounds from the homicide scene.
Now, who ultimately took the gun from the defendant?
Scott said that he took it because Matthew wouldn't give it to his mother. So he said he took the firearm and left the bullets there in the apartment.
And what did he do with the gun?
He took it, as far as all, he put it in his bedroom closet, which is when officers arrived at the house, he told where to find it. They found the gun.
Now, I want to move on to some buccal swabs. At some point, did you obtain a search warrant for the defendant's DNA?
Yes, the deputy standard, and I obtained search warrants, Fulton County search warrants for the defendant's DNA because he was at the Fulton County Jail on Rice Street.
Why were you interested in obtaining that DNA?
To compare with DNA collected on the scene, we were having the ATF process the shell casings for DNA, and then also when we recovered the firearm, we compared any DNA from the firearm.
Now, were you able to actually execute that search warrant?
We did. Search warrant was obtained November the 30th, and we executed December the 1st, I believe around 11:40 hours.
And where did you execute it?
At the Fulton County Jail on the street.
Now, for the judge, how was that buccal swab examination conducted?
We use sterile cotton
the
swabs.
judge
We
knows.
swab the insides of the cheeks. I usually use 2 swabs and swab the inside of the cheek to collect the DNA.
Now, I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibits 482 and 483. Do you recognize these exhibits?
Yes, they're the buccal swab kits from Matthew Scott.
And are these the physical swabs that you took from Matthew Scott Lanz at the jail that day?
Yes, they're sealed in the evidence package.
At this time, the state moves to enter what's marked as State's Exhibits 482 and 483 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
States 482 and 483 are admitted.
Now, while conducting that buccal swab examination, did you also take a photograph of the defendant?
Yes, we took a photograph of the defendant to show who we were collecting the buccal swabs from, and then we also audio recorded our interaction.
I'm now going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 659. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir, it's Matthew Lanz.
And is this the photograph you took during that buccal swab examination?
Yes, sir, it is.
At this time, the state moves to enter what's marked as State's Exhibit 659 into evidence.
Any objection? States 659 is admitted.
Now, you also mentioned an audio recording. Prior to your testimony, did you happen to listen to that audio recording prior to your testimony?
Yes, sir, I viewed it this morning.
And was that a copy of that interaction with Mr. Lanz at the jail that day?
Yes, sir.
At this time, state news entry was marked as State's Exhibit 467 in evidence.
Any objection?
I had the opportunity during the break to listen to that, so we don't have any objections.
Thank you. State 467 is in there.
You gonna publish that?
Yes.
And for the record, I am playing 467 starting at 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Search warrant, and I'm gonna leave you a copy of the search warrant so you can have it to get your turn, okay? Well, it's a search warrant, so I'm gonna get it, if you have any issues with that warrant, you'll pick it up your attorney, and then you can do motions. Search warrant, your attorney. Okay? You're gonna get a key card. All right? That's a lot of
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your cooperation. You got the question today about search warrant? Yes, we moved up that, right? Yes, we're done. And I'll give you this opportunity to keep your own records. I'm sure I just need to file. Lawyer, yes. Yes, yes, give them that copy and then we'll all have additional copies on it that you can get from the court to their copy, okay? That is what it should be. Yeah.
For the record, I'm stopping 467 at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. The remainder of that audio just you leaving it. I'm stopping the video at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Detective, the remainder of that video, is that just you leaving the jail?
Yes, sir, it's just us leaving.
Now, the swabs that were taken, that has been admitted into evidence, were those sent off for forensic testing?
Yes, sir, I believe 2 were sent to the GBI and 2 were sent to the ATF.
Now, I want to show you, what's already been admitted, State Exhibit 659. Now, is this Matthew Lanz, who you performed that buccal swabs on?
Yes, sir, that's the picture I took.
Now, do you see Matthew Lanz in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
If you'll please point him out and describe an article of clothing.
He's sitting at the defense table in the green shirt.
Let the record reflect that the detective has identified the defendant.
The record will still reflect.
Now, were you also tasked with getting buccal swabs for Jacob Hicks?
Yes, sir.
How did you go about doing that?
We did that the same day. We went to their home and got consent from Jacob's grandfather, Timothy. And again, it's a swab of the inside of the cheek.
Now I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibits 657 and 658. Do you recognize them?
Yes, sir, it's the buccal swabs from Jacob's.
At this time, the state moves to enter what's marked as State's Exhibits 657 and 658 into evidence.
Any objection? State 657 and 658 are admitted.
Now, with those swabs as well, were they also sent off for forensic testing?
Yes, sir.
Where?
Also 2 to the GBI and 2 to the ATF.
Nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Barry, you may proceed with your cross.
Thank you. Detective Jackson, were you involved in the search of the home or go to the home on the 18th?
On Defile?
I'm sorry.
On Defile or the one in Athens?
The next day, the 18th.
The scene?
The scene?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay, and what was your job at the scene?
I assisted with processing the scene.
I'm sorry.
I assisted with processing the scene.
Process. Okay, and what did you do to process?
Look for evidence, look for shell casings, search the upstairs bedroom. I remember when the Canadian investigator got there, I assisted with moving Amber's body.
Did you find anything other than the shell casings that were of interest?
I believe we found a piece of a projectile, if I recall.
Okay. Did you collect that or somebody?
I did not. The crime scene technician and the medical examiner's office collected those items.
You indicated that you had possession of a firearm at some point?
The firearm that used in the crime?
Correct.
No, sir, not that I recall.
And you indicated that you got a Fulton County search warrant. Was that you or some other?
I was with Detective Standard, but Detective Standard was the affidavit. And in relation to the firearm, I did find the magazines at the apartment in Athens.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. Did you go to Athens to be involved in that search there?
Yes, sir.
And what did you find in that search of that?
In the computer desk drawer, I found 2 loaded magazines.
Okay, 2 loaded magazines, and were those 9mm magazines?
Yes, sir.
Did you find any loose bullets?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Was there anything else that you found of significance there in the search in Athens?
No, sir, not that I recall.
And were the magazines that you collected, were they sent to the ATF or the crime lab, whoever's going to do the testing on those?
I believe Detective Stan sent them off, but I'm not sure. I do remember counting the rounds in them. One was fully loaded and one, I believe, had 12 rounds in it.
Okay. How many rounds does the clip normally hold?
17.
Okay. And did you do anything else in relation to this case other than what you testified to?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Is there any follow-up or redirect for Detective Jackson?
No, Judge.
May I be excused?
Yes, Judge.
Thank you. Detective Jackson, excuse me. State, call your next witness.
At this time, the state calls Todd Bill.
To be great chief, and you will stand and do swear.
You raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the court on the issue now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
You have a seat for me. And once seated, if you please state and spell your true and correct legal name for the record.
It's Todd Bill, last name is B as in boy, I-L-L-E.
You may
Why
proceed.
can I not hear?
Good afternoon. If you'll please introduce yourself to the
Totally
judge
missed his
and,
name.
explain how you were employed.
Todd Bill, the senior scientist for the DNA section at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives Laboratory in Beltsville, Maryland.
Now, you say that you're a DNA scientist. What,
Appreciate it. Thank you.
you said that you're a DNA scientist for the ATF. What does that mean?
So as a senior scientist, I act as in an advisory capacity to the Deputy Assistant Director of the Office of Science and Technology for the ATF Laboratory. I also perform research. I coordinate research internally at the ATF lab. I also coordinate research with other government agencies and external agencies. And then, as necessary now, I do some casework analysis as well.
Now, it probably goes without saying, but is the ATF an accredited lab?
Yes.
Now, for the judge, can you describe your job responsibilities?
So as a senior scientist, like I said, I advise the Deputy Assistant Director of the OSD. I also perform research on improving methods, research new methods that we could potentially implement, help with the evaluation of those methods, and then perform casework analysis.
Now, how long have you been with the ATF?
It's coming up on 20 years, since 2006.
And have you been specifically kind of in the DNA field with the ATF during that entire time?
Yes.
Prior to being with the ATF since 2006, did you have any other experience dealing with DNA?
Yes, I started my forensic career with the Indiana State Police Laboratory in 1991. I was actually hired in the trace unit. As before they had a DNA unit, but later on that year they decided that they wanted to start a DNA unit. And since my background was in biochemistry, I transferred over to the DNA unit, helped start that unit. I was there for 10 years, doing DNA analysis, serology analysis. Eventually, when the DNA technical leader position became a thing, I became the DNA technical leader of the laboratory. DNA technical leader is responsible for all DNA technical, or all aspects of the DNA analysis at the laboratory. So developing methods, validating those methods, implementing them, performing research. You oversee all the training of the analysts. You're also responsible to make sure you're following all the quality assurance guidelines and that we comply with all the accreditation and national quality assurance standards. I was a DNA technical leader there, eventually became supervisor, and then in 2001, I was hired by the Bodie Technology Group, which is a private DNA laboratory in Northern Virginia, as the assistant laboratory director. And there I oversaw casework analysis and other special projects. For instance, I led the team to develop the DNA extraction methods and process flow for the DNA identification of some of the skeletal remains from World Trade Center.
I'm sorry.
And then became vice president of special projects there. Involved doing different special projects with mass graves, mass humanitarian events. For instance, I went to Thailand after the tsunami in 2004, 2005 to help with the identification there. Then in 2006, ATF laboratory decided they wanted to have a DNA unit. They've had a laboratory, ATF's had a laboratory since late 1800s, but a lot of the DNA analysis up to that point wasn't really relevant to what they did. DNA analysis was typically body fluids such as blood, semen, saliva, but touch DNA analysis was becoming more prevalent at that time, and so that lent itself more to the type of evidence that we see at the ATF: firearms, explosive devices, and Molotov cocktails, things like that. So they hired me, as well as two other people. They hired me as the DNA technical leader to lead the team to try to get DNA analysis at the ATF laboratory. There I was a DNA technical leader until about 2 years ago, and then I got promoted to the senior scientist position.
Now, with that experience, did you have education that led you towards becoming a DNA analyst for the ATF?
Yes. My Bachelor of Science degree is in biochemistry from Purdue University, and then I also have a Master's of Science degree from Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis.
And do you also continue your education through, I guess, CLEs or PowerPoints or anything to the sort?
Yes, so I went through my initial training in 1991, 1992 at the Indiana State Police Lab for general evidence handling. I went through general training at the Indiana State Police Lab for general evidence handling and then DNA analysis, serology. Eventually, when I came to ATF, I wrote the training manual for there, oversaw training for most analysts. But then, as I said, we do continuing education through our entire career. In addition to keeping up with the literature, I've attended probably over 80 DNA workshops, training seminars, things like that over the course of almost 35 years now.
Now, how much of your time is actually devoted to DNA typing research?
100%.
Now,
sorry, 100%.
Now, for the judge, what is DNA?
So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's a substance in almost all the cells of your body. It's all the cells except for red blood cells. It contains the genetic information or the information that codes for most of your physical characteristics. Most of the DNA across all individuals is the same, which is why we all have 2 eyes, a nose, 2 ears, etc. But there are small differences in that DNA that we look at as forensic scientists. You can think of DNA as a set of encyclopedias on how to build a body. You get one set of encyclopedias from your mom, one set of encyclopedias from your dad at conception, and then your DNA is the same throughout your body. So if we're looking at blood, semen, saliva, all that genetic information is the same across all those fluids. It's even in the cells and the DNA that's left behind in a fingerprint in the body oils and sweat.
Now, what exactly is DNA typing or DNA analysis?
So it's a forensic.
Object at this point, because he hasn't been tendered as an expert. So if he's going to go into questions about that, I think he needs to be tendered, and then we have an opportunity to ask you questions.
Well, I'm laying the foundation to get him to an expert.
What was the question?
What exactly is DNA typing or DNA analysis?
I think you have to be an
I'll
expert to.
I'll sustain the objection since you're asking me specifically to go into explaining what the process is.
Okay. Have you been trained in DNA typing, DNA analysis?
Yes.
And over the 35 years of being a senior DNA analyst, is that your job?
Yes.
And can you tell the board as to what that process is?
What DNA analysis is?
Yeah.
Yes.
And is that something that you've been doing for the last 35 years?
Yes.
So at this time, I would move to tender him as an expert in DNA analysis.
Did you want to, what are
We'll hear him on that at this point.
all right, you may.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You indicated that at this point you are more in the research than you are actually doing the DNA testing. Would that be fair to say?
Well, this year's been kind of a big year, so I've been doing actually a lot of casework this year, but yeah, my job responsibilities span both research, casework, and advising the deputy assistant director.
And what were you doing in 2021? What was your job in 2021?
I was the DNA technical leader.
Okay. And did you actually do the testing on this case?
So we do kind of a team approach. There's an analyst that did some of the extractions on this, and then I took it after the extraction on.
Okay, so you didn't actually do the testing, you looked at it afterwards?
I did some of the testing, yes. So he did, this individual did the extraction, then I did the, and we'll probably get into this later, but I did the quantitation, concentration, amplification, genetic analyzer analysis, and then the interpretation and comparison along with the statistical calculations.
And
Sorry, as well as the statistical calculations. Statistical stats.
And who was the analyst that did the other portions of that investigation?
Mr. Clayton's, Adam Clayton's.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Adam Clayton's, he's another analyst in our laboratory.
What is your, you have a doctorate degree?
No, sir.
And what is your actual title?
Senior
Have an
scientist,
actual title other than?
senior scientist of the DNA section.
Why is he challenging this guy of all people?
Declared an expert by the courts.
This is, I believe, my 90th time testifying both at
90th?
local, state, and federal level.
Why is he challenging this one? Is this the first expert witness?
And have you been qualified here in Cobb County on any cases in the past?
I don't believe so, no, sir.
I don't think I have any further questions, Judge.
All right. Either ways.
I don't have any objection to you being qualified.
Okay, so he is tendered and qualified as a DNA analyst expert.
Thank you, Judge. So, can you go through the process of DNA analysis?
So the goal of DNA analysis is to collect DNA or biological material from evidence from a crime scene, develop DNA profiles from that evidence, and then compare those profiles to the DNA profiles from relevant individuals, determine who could or couldn't be included, or who could or couldn't be possibly included as contributors to those DNA profiles, and then draw conclusions from there.
Now, can you explain the process for conducting DNA typing?
So the first step, and probably the most important step, is the DNA collection, collecting it at the scene, and then collecting the biological material from the evidence itself. This is usually some type of a swabbing collection method. Then we extract the DNA. This is a series of steps that separates the DNA from the cellular and environmental debris. Once we've extracted and purified the DNA, then we determine how much DNA we actually recover from the evidence. We may have to concentrate the DNA down, but eventually we amplify the DNA. We use a process called polymerase chain reaction, or PCR. This is basically just a molecular Xerox machine that makes millions and millions of copies of specific regions of the DNA. If you go back to the analogy of thinking of DNA as a set of encyclopedias, it's like you're going back in and making specific copies of paragraphs within these sets of encyclopedias and just making millions and millions of copies of those just for visualization purposes. Once we've amplified it, we take those samples and run them through a genetic analyzer. Sorry.
Water there.
Thank you. Run it through. Run those samples through the genetic analyzer, which separates and detects the amplified product. This gives you basically a graphical representation, which is a series of peaks. We then do the interpretation, determine if the profiles are suitable for comparison purposes. If they are, then we perform the DNA analysis on the known DNA samples from relevant individuals, draw conclusions, and make determinations of whether or not they could be possibly included or excluded as contributors to the DNA, and perform a statistical calculation to lend weight to those conclusions.
Now, once you kind of get that statistical, let me backtrack. How exactly are they read? Is it in that graph-like kind of representation when you get the results?
Yes, sir.
What types of results can you get once you get to that point?
So when we do our comparisons, we perform a statistical calculation using software tools and Assistant. And the end product of that is a likelihood ratio. A likelihood ratio is really just a statistical calculation that compares the probability of an event under one or under two different hypotheses. And so for DNA specifically, we calculate a likelihood ratio based on the probability of seeing that DNA profile, given that the individual is a contributor, divided by the probability of seeing that DNA profile, given that the person is not a contributor. And so, depending on the magnitude of that likelihood ratio, that determines our conclusion. If we start kind of in the middle of a likelihood ratio of 1, that just means that neither side is favored. There's no, the evidence doesn't provide favorability for inclusion or exclusion. As you go to values less than 1, if it's just under 1, close to 1, but less than 1, there's limited support for exclusion, meaning there's some favorability for exclusion, but it's within a range where we have a higher risk of false exclusion. And then as you get further away from 1 all the way down to 0, we would just conclude that the person's excluded as being a possible contributor. Going the other way, if the value is just greater than 1, it's favoring the hypothesis that probability of seeing the evidence given that the person is a contributor. But again, if it's just a little bit greater than 1, you're in that range where you have a higher risk of false inclusion. And so we'd say there's limited support for inclusion. But then as you get greater than that and further away from 1, you have more and more support for probability of seeing that evidence given that the person is included.
Now, when interpreting these results, do you all have population frequencies?
Yes.
Why are they important?
So we need population frequencies to calculate these statistics. There's different forms of each of these genetic markers we look at, so we need to know how frequently these different forms of these different alleles are found in the population in order to calculate the statistics.
Now, has your lab ever conducted testing that led to the exclusion of a suspect?
Yes.
Is DNA typing used in fields other than criminal cases?
Yes.
And under what circumstances would it be used?
DNA typing is used in medical diagnostic testing, paternity testing, ancestry testing, identification of victims from mass disasters or mass graves, etc.
Now, the process in which you do your DNA typing analysis, is that accepted throughout the scientific community?
Yes.
Is it deemed reliable?
Yes,
And do you know if other agencies use this method?
yes.
Now, are there controls in place to ensure reliability for your testing?
Yes,
Can you describe those?
we have positive and negative controls that are used throughout the process. Positive controls are known DNA samples, so we know what the results are supposed to be. And that just ensures that the work, that the DNA analysis was performed correctly throughout. We also have negative controls that have all the same reagents that are used for everything else, except we don't add DNA to those, and those are to detect any contamination.
Detect any.
Contamination,
Now, is there also proficiency testing?
yes.
And can you explain that?
So proficiency tests, it's a program where we get a set of DNA samples from an external laboratory where we don't know what the results are. We perform our analysis, we submit our results back to that agency. They compare them to the expected results and let us know kind of how we did. Hopefully they match. We do this twice a year.
Is there also some form of quality assurance?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
So the quality assurance program is a program that ensures we produce quality products. This covers everything from laboratory security and the laboratory building, all the way from how we hire people, the training of the people, the methods we use, all the way to how we report our analyses as well.
Now, could someone with the same knowledge, experience, and understanding of this process ensure that the testing is repeatable? Sorry, that was a bad question. Can someone with the same training and experience as you complete that same analysis and yield the same results?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a peer review process?
Yes.
Can you explain to the board what that is?
It's kind of two levels of review. Our laboratory as a whole, because we're accredited, we go through periodic audits from external agencies to make sure we comply with the standards for the accreditation. As a DNA unit specifically, we have to follow the national quality assurance standards, and so we're audited by an external agency every 2 years. But then specifically for these analyses, every report that we put out goes through a technical review. This is a review that's conducted by another qualified DNA analyst, and they review our notes, our laboratory processes, all our worksheets, our results, our conclusions, and the report itself to make sure we didn't make any technical errors. And then after that's performed, we do an administrative review, which is by another individual. This individual makes sure that the report and the analyses were conducted following the laboratory's protocols and guidelines.
Now, I want to direct your attention to this case here. How did you come to work with this case?
Evidence and the transmittal was submitted to our laboratory.
And what were you requested to do?
Our laboratory was requested to perform DNA analysis on 3 9mm cartridge cases and a set of 2 swabs from a firearm, and then no DNA samples from 4 individuals.
Okay. Now, were you able to fulfill that request?
Yes.
Now, what items did you specifically analyze?
We looked at those, or we analyzed those 3 9mm cartridge cases, the 2 swabs, and then 4 samples, no DNA samples from 4 individuals.
Now, I'm going to show you what's already been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 657. Do you recognize the labeling on this 657?
Yes.
And if you'll turn it over, what is this labeled as?
This is labeled as the no DNA sample from Jacob Hicks, the buccal swabs.
And is this the buccal swabs that were used in your analysis?
Yes.
And moving to State's Exhibit 482 that's already been admitted into evidence, do you recognize the labeling on that?
Yes,
And if you'll flip it over again, what is this exhibit?
these are labeled as the known DNA samples from Matthew Scott Lanz, buccal swabs.
Now, States Exhibit 602, 603, 604, do you recognize the labeling on those?
Yes,
And what are these exhibits?
these are labeled as the 3 9mm fire cartridge cases.
And are these the cartridge casings that were swabbed for DNA?
Yes,
Now, once you had all of this information or all of these exhibits, did you conduct your analysis?
yes,
And once you conducted your analysis of those exhibits, did you reduce your findings to a report?
yes, sir.
I'm going to show you what's marked as States Exhibit 671. You recognize States Exhibit 671?
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize it?
It has my initials on each page and then the final page is signed.
Is this your report for this case?
Yes, sir.
At this time, the state moves to enter what's marked as States Exhibit 671 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, we object to the document itself going out because it's a report, it's continuing testimony.
Well-
We can testify from it, certainly, but not to have it tendered to go out to the court.
Let me get your response.
So that objection doesn't go towards the admissibility of the report itself. Now, his objection would be at a different time.
I was gonna say, you talking about the word seeing it or being admitted?
I mean, it can be admitted as part of the case, but it can't go back to the court because it's continuing testimony.
Okay, but you're objecting, I was asking if there's an objection to its admitted. So,
Correct, only as to going to the court, to be able to use that and read from it.
okay, so I think we're there yet. So I'm gonna overrule the objection as to, I'll admit it or objection. And then when we get to
Specific part.
evidence that the court will get to review, then we can address that. But I'm going to admit it over the objection.
Thank you, Judge. Any other Judge?
Yes.
All right. I'm now showing you the first page of 607, States Exhibit 671. What is this header up here?
That's just describing our laboratory.
And is that the ATF?
Yes.
All right. Now down here, below that to the right, is what information do we find here?
So that's the date the report was transmitted. It's our laboratory's case number, has the 2 submission numbers where evidence was submitted at 2 different times, has the reference number, which is our ATF agent's case number. Of course, that's different. Then there's the title of the actual investigation, and then for this type of exam, it's my specific exam, forensic biology.
Now, under reference title, what is the reference title that you have here?
Title is Verbena Drive Homicide.
Now, what information did you have when you actually received these items?
There's usually a report of investigation that we get along with the evidence that describes where the evidence came from. Potentially a little bit of background so we know what we're actually performing DNA analysis on.
And from where it came from, is that Verbena Drive homicide?
Yes.
Now, down below, we have listed exhibits. What are these 3 here?
So lab exhibit numbers 1, 2, and 3, as well as agency exhibit numbers 1, 2, and 3, are the 3 9mm cartridge cases.
And are those the 3 that you've already identified in your testimony?
Yes.
Now, I did forget to show you states Exhibit 461 that's already been admitted into evidence. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes,
Now, is 461 the, what you have listed here as number 4?
yes,
And is that the swabs of the ZEV 9, OZ9?
that's how they were identified to us, yes.
Now, as we continue down in that section, what were the other items that were submitted to you?
So exhibits 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the 4 known DNA samples from the relevant individuals.
Now, you have already, for number 5 and number 6, were those the items that you've already identified here in court?
Yes.
Now, if you will please, let me ask this. As we proceed through your report, do you have some sort of a grid system indicating the results?
Yes, in order to try to simplify how we report results, we report it in a table fashion.
Now, I'm going to show you page 2 of 671. Now, for the court, can you walk through this grid so we can understand your findings?
Yes. So the left column is the exhibit number. So we just talked about exhibits 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are the 4 known DNA samples. Going across there, we have the sub-exhibit number. So whenever we take a cutting of something, we create a sub-exhibit from that. So 5.1, 6.1, 7.1, 8.1. 5.1, 6.1, 7.1, and 8.1 are all the sub-exhibits from exhibits 5 through 8. 5.1, this is the cutting of the known DNA sample from Matthew Scott Lanz. 6.1 was the known DNA sample from Jacob Hicks. 7.1 was the known DNA sample from Steven Sinatra. And then 8.1 was the known DNA sample from Timothy Hicks. So you go across, the next column lists results. So here we just kind of summarize the DNA profile we saw. These were known DNA samples, so they should be single source. So in this case, for all 4 of these, we obtained a single source male DNA profile. The next column just lists whether or not that profile is suitable for comparison. Again, these are known DNA samples, so yes, they were all 4 were suitable for comparison. Going down to exhibit number 1, 2, 3, that's the combined sample of fired cartridge cases. That just fell under sub-exhibit 1.1. Those are the combined swabs from the 3 9mm cartridge cases. The result from that was a DNA profile consistent with 2 contributors. At least one of those contributors was male, and it was suitable for comparison. Going across, there's a whole section for conclusions, and you can see those 5 conclusions I listed before. In this case, found that there was support for inclusion for Jacob Hicks, exhibit 6.1, support for inclusion as a contributor, possible contributor to this profile from the 3 fire cartridge cases.
And I'm going to kind of stop you there, and then we'll just talk about that finding, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay. So going to the exhibit number 1, 2, 3 column here, we see combined swabs from 3 9mm cartridge casings. Were swabs taken of those 3 casings?
Yes, it's a kind of a rinse and swab method that we developed specifically for fire cartridge cases. And we're kind of weighing, if we do each one individually, we expect very little amounts of DNA from fire cartridge cases. So since these all had the same markings, same caliber, the individual collected the DNA from all 3 of these as one sample.
So swab all 3 of them, and that was used in your comparison to these known DNA samples of Matthew Lanz, Jacob Hicks, Steven Sinatra, and Timothy Hicks.
Correct.
All right. Now, did you follow your DNA analysis process while comparing the DNA profile from the 9mm cartridge cases to the known DNA profiles?
Yes.
Now, is that what we're finding as a result here in that second, or I guess the fourth box to the right?
So that result is determined whether or not the profile is suitable for comparison, and then the next columns are the actual results of the comparisons.
Now, for the results for the cartridge cases, were two types of profiles found?
It was determined to be a mixture of two individuals, yes.
All right. Now, as we move over, we see Jacob Hicks. What does it mean when Jacob Hicks is in this column?
So if you remember when we described the possible results we could get from our comparisons, one of those was support for inclusion. And so when we did this comparison to Mr. Hicks, to Jacob Hicks, then the likelihood ratio gave a result that was much greater than 1, therefore it favored the probability of seeing this evidence given that Jacob Hicks was a contributor to the mixture.
Now, were you sent the DNA profile of Amber Hicks?
Yes. Or no, sorry, no, sir.
All right. Is it possible if it could be an Amber Hicks's DNA on these cartridge casings?
Yes, she could be the second individual, yes.
And over here on the far right, we haven't got to this column here. What's this column?
That's the result that favored exclusion. And in this case, these individuals were excluded as being possible contributors to the DNA profile.
So for the cartridge casings themselves was Matthew Lanz, Stephen Sinatra, and Timothy Justin Hicks excluded from these two profiles that was found, given the population frequency.
Yes, I mean, it's a single profile, it's a mixture of two individuals, but yes, they were excluded as being contributors to that mixture.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about touch DNA. What is touch DNA?
So touch DNA, trace DNA, this is just a general reference to something different than what we typically thought of DNA analysis in the past, where it was blood and body fluids. This is being given a DNA profile from something that you've touched or it's been touched. It's DNA that's left behind in the body oils or sweat in the finger, or doesn't have to be a finger, but something that's come in contact with you.
Now, if a child were to pick up a casing and play with it, is it possible for that child's DNA to be on a casing?
Yes.
Now, in your experience on discharge casings or cartridges, how successful are you in actually extracting DNA off of spent casings?
On a per sample basis, about 30% of the time, we get a DNA profile that's suitable for comparison from a sample from fire cartridge cases.
After a casing is actually fired, is that when a majority of the DNA could be destroyed?
There's a lot of factors that affect how much DNA we recover and the quality of that DNA. There's just the deposition itself is affected by the substrate, how much pressure, how the pressure is applied, but also the substrate itself. One of the biggest factors we found was DNA interacts with copper that's in brass and degrades DNA, which can have almost as big of a degradation effect as the firing process. So there's many different factors that can affect the amount of DNA we recover from a fire cartridge case.
Now, not only physically holding it, if a casing is ejected out of a firearm and lands on a carpet within a house occupied by residents, is it possible for their DNA to end up on that cartridge casing?
Is it possible? Potentially. But again, there's a lot of factors, more DNA transfers with direct contact, more contacts that happen, the further away you get from the direct contact, the less DNA that can be transferred. Depends how much DNA and biological material is on the carpet to begin with. If it falls in a corner that's not stepped on very often, or there's not much contact. with the
Hey,
skin,
Aurora.
that would reduce the amount of DNA that we transferred. If people don't walk in bare feet on the carpet, then there might not be much biological material there to begin with the transfer. Things transfer if they're wet more often than if dried surfaces, so there's a lot of factors that would affect that.
Now, for your findings in this specific examination of the casings, were you able to, did you find a population frequency?
We performed our statistical calculation, yes.
Now, moving to page,
Our statistical calculation.
I'm moving to page 3 of State's Exhibit 671. Now, within this paragraph here, if you'll tell the court what your findings were as it relates to Jacob Hicks.
Do you mind if I read from the report?
If you'll read from the report.
So the statistical calculation number 1, which if you look at the table again, that's what was in that final column. We labeled each of the statistical calculations. First, we list what the conclusion was to begin with, and that was a DNA profile consistent with a mixture of 2 individuals was obtained from this sample, exhibit 1.1, which again was the DNA collected from the 3 fire cartridge cases. We listed our assumptions, so in this case, we're assuming that 2 individuals are assumed to have contributed to the DNA profile. And then we list the 2 different hypotheses. So again, when we're talking about the likelihood ratio, this is probability of seeing the evidence under one hypothesis, which in this case called the inclusionary hypothesis. The DNA originated from Jacob Hicks and an unrelated unknown individual, or the other hypothesis, in this case the exclusionary hypothesis. The DNA originated from 2 unrelated unknown individuals. Those are the assumptions in the hypotheses. So then the actual likelihood ratio, the DNA profile is at least 1 trillion times more likely if it originated from Jacob Hicks and an unrelated unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unrelated unknown individuals. Kind of putting this in a different context, the probability of an unrelated individual in the population who has not contributed DNA to this sample yielding this level of support is less than 1 in 1 trillion. And then F, the F statement, just based on this calculation, there is evidentiary support for the inclusion of Jacob Hicks as a possible contributor to the DNA profile obtained from Exhibit 1.1. And that last statement, we had one locus, one of the genetic markers we look at, SC33, had an artifact in it, so we did not use that in the calculation.
Now, I want to talk about your population frequency. 1 trillion is a big number. Is that the specific number, or do you have parameters as to your frequencies?
The actual likelihood ratio is bigger than that, but we cap it at 1 trillion because once you get to quite
No, I'm just bored.
it becomes kind of meaningless. So we cap it at 1 trillion.
So
The audio just
more
sucks
than 1
this
trillion,
afternoon
but
for some
for
reason.
your guidelines, you stop at 1 trillion.
Yes.
All right, now I'm going to move back to page 2 of this exhibit. Now, if you'll walk through this line in the grid for the judge.
Sorry, I didn't see which one.
All right, the last line here.
So here, again, we're talking about Exhibit 4, and then the sub item from that, which is the cuttings of the swabs. These were the set of swabs from the pistol. And again, we've obtained a DNA profile consistent with a mixture of 2 individuals. At least one of those was male. We determined that the profile was suitable for comparison purposes. And then, in this case, Matthew Scott Lanz, there was support for inclusion of Matthew Scott Lanz as being a contributor to this mixture.
Now, and over here on the excluded, who do we see here?
So Jacob Hicks, Stephen Sinatra, and Timothy Hicks were all excluded as possible contributors to this DNA profile.
Now, were you sent the DNA profile of a Scott Lanz?
Just Matthew Scott Lanz, not Scott Lanz, yes.
Now, if Matthew Scott Lanz's father touched this gun, would their DNA match?
Match.
I don't understand that question. Would it match?
Let me,
Can you just rephrase what?
yeah, I'll rephrase my question. Sorry, Judge. Let me give an example.
There's one of
If
them. Shadow, what'd you do
Both
with the other
Matthew
one?
Scott Lanz and Scott Lanz touched this gun, or a gun, would you see a difference between the DNA profile?
We can distinguish between father and son.
My
Yes.
earring.
And so in the swab that was taken of the pistol
look
compared
all
to
over
these
for
DNA
them.
profiles, was Matthew Scott Lanz
Cat.
included?
There was support for his inclusion as a contributor to the
Get
DNA
you
profile
a
from
plane ticket
swabs
too.
of firearm.
Now, with your results, it reads that there is another contributor to that mixture. Is that right?
Yes.
If the father had touched this gun, is it possible that his DNA is on the gun too?
It is possible, yes.
And not being sent his DNA profile, are you unable to tell us whether or not the father's DNA is on the gun?
Correct. Without being able to make that comparison, we can't do that.
Now, going to the population frequency of Matthew Lanz's population frequency of inclusion, if you'll tell the court your finding.
So again, I don't know if you want me to repeat these, but they're kind of the same. The initial statement, then A, B, and C are all the same as above because these are both two-person mixtures. Inclusionary hypothesis, Matthew Scott Lanz, and inclusionary hypothesis was DNA originated from Matthew Scott Lanz and an unknown, unrelated individual. Exclusionary hypothesis is that the DNA originated from two unrelated, unknown individuals. The likelihood ratio, statement D, the DNA profile is at least 1 trillion times more likely if it originated from Matthew Scott Lanz and an unknown or unrelated, unknown individual than if it originated from two unrelated, unknown individuals. And again, putting this in a little bit different context, the probability of an unrelated individual in the population who has not contributed DNA to this sample yielding this level of support is less than 1 in 1 trillion. Based on this calculation, there's evidentiary support for the inclusion of Matthew Scott Lanz as a possible contributor to the DNA profile obtained from 4.1, which were the swabs of the firearm.
So now, just to go back to this, to page 1 of the exhibit. So those findings that you just gave to the court were that the swabs of the ZEV OZ9 pistol had 2 profiles on them, one of which was Matthew Scott Lanz.
There was support for inclusion because to be a positive contributor, yes.
Now, as you finalized your report, was it peer reviewed?
Yes, sir.
And was it approved through the peer review process?
Yes.
Nothing further, Judge.
Thank you. Barry, you can proceed with your cross.
Just got a couple of questions. You received the firearm, correct? In your lab?
I actually don't know. I just know from what we received, for DNA analysis, we received the fire cartridge cases and the 2 swabs of the firearm. I don't know if we received the firearm itself at the laboratory in Maryland.
Does your lab, I know it's an ATF lab, do they process firearms for trace evidence? Do you know?
Yes.
They do. Okay. And do you know whether this firearm was ever given to the lab for any trace evidence?
I believe it went for the exam at our Atlanta laboratory. And so if we went there, they would treat it like any other piece of evidence where we try to maximally exploit any potential evidence on that, which includes fingerprints, trace, fibers, and DNA.
And I was a little confused about this question. Would it be possible for Amber Hicks's DNA to be on the shell casings You were not given her DNA sample, or were you?
We were not, therefore couldn't make that comparison.
So when the state asks you if it's possible, I guess anything's possible, but not be probable. If you didn't get it, there's no way you'd be able to know, right?
I can't say if it's probable or not probable, I wasn't given the sample to do the comparison.
All we know is that Jacob Hicks' DNA did show up on those shell cases.
There was support for inclusion of Jacob Hicks on those cartridge cases. I can't say definitively one way or the other.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Barry. Any other words? Is there any follow-up or redirect?
No, Judge.
And Mr. Billy, excuse?
Yes, Judge.
Thank you very much.
Why don't we take a quick break, and if I could have the attorneys approach just 1 minute.
I think we're caught up to the live. Yeah, we are. Oh, now I'm sleepy.
It'll be 4:10. Yeah, we'll be there, 4:10.
Okay. Cross that bridge when they get.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, they move, they don't like seeing the back of these guys' heads.
Okay.
You know, the judge and the, people understand it's more important.
Oh, really? I could put the petition in where you,
Yeah.
you wanna go right here?
So I want, if, the one you see the attorneys.
So right now, the lot fee is, we're taking it for.
I should be seeing that seal. Hopefully for me,
That's what you should be seeing.
Keeping everything in order.
Do they not have a mental defense in Georgia? Or did he check out all right? Because I don't think he's right. But I think there also might be a little bit of demon in there too. I'm serious. And didn't his mom say he'd been hanging around with people that were doing devil worship stuff? Or there was a house where he thought some devil worship stuff was going on? It's real. I swear it is. I took care of a teenager that had a Haitian curse put on her. I swear to you guys, I am not lying. Even, well, you guys know I'm a Christian, but even nurses that didn't believe in anything, they believed that she was cursed. Like, they would as they would get assigned her, and before they go in her room, they'd say, "Pray for me." They everybody said she was like cursed or demon possessed or something. Everybody. Some even before they heard the story. The story was that she was dating some guy and another girl, I guess it was like a new girl at school, wanted to date him, and her parents were Haitian, so she knew like voodoo curses and stuff. And she put a voodoo curse on his girlfriend so she would get sick and they would break up and then she could move in and have the boyfriend. And this girl, oh my God, y'all, this girl. Ooh, uh, frothing at the mouth, constantly moving, never stopped moving, never. Um, Cursing, spitting, The Exorcist, like without the bed coming off the floor. Terrifying. Yeah, you agree, Belle? Yeah, that was before you were born, honey. That was a long time ago. But yeah, and the doctors could not find one thing wrong with her. Not one thing. Terrifying. Why was she there? Because she couldn't stop moving. Seriously, like, I guess it was gradual. Like, I guess she just got to where her muscles didn't work right and she couldn't walk anymore, and she just was writhing around all the time. Um, she didn't she didn't make any sense when she spoke. Like she could still speak words, but it was like grunting and well, have you ever watched like an exorcism on TV, real or not? An exorcism, the way they talk. It was like that. It was like grunt, groan, a sentence that might make sense, a string of curse words. So I guess apparently it was gradual, and I can't remember if she ate or not. That I don't remember. If she wasn't eating, no, they couldn't find anything wrong with her. They couldn't find anything. They did every test they could think of. She was bouncing from floor to floor to floor to floor to floor because like every different type of doctor looked at her. Like she's bouncing all over the hospital. And then they find because she was 17, 16, 17, she came to our floor because it was pediatrics after she'd gone. I mean, usually pediatrics comes to pediatrics, but because of her condition being so bizarre, she went to all these other specialty areas first. And so we'd heard about her. We knew she was in the hospital in like, I guess like pediatric intensive care. I don't know if she had like a big seizure or something because she went to intensive care for a while and we heard about her and I was like, oh my God, no, 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 because I've, I've had not get cursed, but I've had friends that went like on missionary trips to Haiti and come back sick. Not like cursed, but sick. Just like, and it could have been a stomach bug or something, like they just have like headaches or get really nauseous all the time or, a bad flu. It could just be like travel sickness, not necessarily like they caught something because they were there preaching or whatever. But, as soon as I heard Haiti curse, I was like, oh no, 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 no. I don't want to deal with her. And I had to take care of her one night, and I never went in her room alone. Like, I'm not going, come with me. I'm not going in there alone.
All right, we still
They
on
couldn't
break.
find
The attorneys
anything
need
wrong
a
with
bit
her. Nothing.
longer
Nothing.
time for discussions, and so if y'all want to learn,
Yeah,
the attorneys are very out.
it's scary. It scares me.
Judge.
What?
Oh,
Sorry, Judge.
come back. This is not back. Oh, and I'm not
Boom. Well, it's nice of them to share their break with us.
I'll let the guys downstairs know as well.
It's so weird not having a jury. Because it's nice. You have to listen to all those stupid jury instructions.
I muted it earlier, but
But it's also weird, too. Because it feels like they forgot to do something. You know, it's like, wait a minute. Isn't the judge supposed to say something now? Look how thin he is.
Recording back in session.
Thank you. Everyone have a seat for me. Thank you. We are back on the record for the state of Georgia versus Matthew Scott Lanz. All parties are present. Okay, are you ready to proceed? Is there anything we need to put on the record?
We are, Judge, would like to put one thing on the record. We had an opportunity to talk about the objection that I might have as to the playing video from Sandy Springs. The state has agreed to put in a couple of photographs and not do the video.
Okay.
So we come to that conclusion, so I think we're ready to move on.
Okay. All right.
that's correct, Judge.
Anything else we need to put on the record?
So, Judge.
All right. Y'all call your next witness.
At this time, the state calls Vanna Kelly.
Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the court on the issue now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. Please have a seat for me. And once seated, If you would please state and spell your true and correct legal name for the record.
My name is Vanna Kelly, VANNAKELLEY.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Ms. Kelly, how are you employed?
I am a firearm and tool mark examiner with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which is commonly known as the ATF.
And how long have you been working there?
It will be 6 years in January.
For the court, can you go over your education, training, and experience that has led you to become a firearm tool mark examiner for the ATF?
I have a Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice and a Master's in Public Administration. As I was finishing up my master's degree at the University of Georgia in 2011, I was hired by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which is the GBI. And at that time, in 2011, I served for 1 year at the GBI as a NIBIN technician. NIBIN is NIBIN, and that acronym stands for the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network. So essentially, as a NIBIN technician, I was imaging information from fired cartridge cases into a database, and that database will return potentially linked crime scenes to each other. After doing that for a year, I began training as a firearms examiner at the GBI. The GBI's in-house training program to be a firearms examiner was 1 year long, and during that time, I studied several different topics related to firearms examination, which included ammunition, learning about different types of firearms. I went on manufacturing tours to see how firearms are made, manufacturing tours to see how ammunition is made. I also trained other examiners while I was there, and I did, I believe, 5 armorers courses with different firearms manufacturers. So armorers courses are courses that are put on by the gun manufacturers, where basically we fully take apart a firearm, learn about how that firearm and all the parts function, reassemble the firearm, do safety checks to make sure that the firearm is functioning again, and learn about different troubleshooting techniques. Also at the GBI, I did serial number restorations, which is trying to recover a serial number that has been obliterated, that you can't read anymore. And also distance determinations, which were looking at gunpowder particles to try to determine how far the muzzle of the firearm was to the object that got shot. Additionally, since I've been at the ATF, I've went on more manufacturing tours. I'm also an instructor with the National Firearms Examiner Academy, where I teach other firearms examiners throughout the United States how to do different areas like I explained, and also still do serial number restorations. And I received additional training at the ATF in tool mark examination, which is that broader category of tools, including things like bolt cutters, knives, etc. like that, whereas firearms identification, firearms being a specific type of tool.
And so in total, you've been with the ATF for 6 years. And during, does that year-long program that you were with the ATF, does that count in that 6 years, or is that prior to that?
So the year-long training was my initial training with the GBI, and then I had, I think it was additional training of months of the tool mark training, in addition to the training I already had from the GBI when I got to the ATF.
Now, have you ever testified as an expert in firearms identification and analysis?
Yes.
About how many times?
92 prior to today.
Ever here in Cobb County?
Yes.
At this time, the state tenders Ms. Kelly as an expert in firearms identification and analysis.
No objection, Judge.
She's tenured and accepted as firearms identification analysis.
Now, for the court, can you kind of explain what it means to be a firearm examiner?
Yes, so as a firearms examiner, my main responsibility is looking at fired ammunition components such as bullets and cartridge cases to determine if those bullets were fired from the same firearm, multiple firearms, the same thing with cartridge cases. Do the cartridge cases I have represent one firearm, multiple firearms, or if a firearm or multiple firearms are submitted for analysis, I can also create test fires with the firearm and then analyze those bullets and cartridge cases from the firearm to the bullets and cartridge cases from the scene.
Now, generally, can you explain how, I guess the gun works and it interacts with the cartridge case, or the cartridge, and it becomes a casing and so on?
May I use a demonstrative aid?
Sure.
So
Oh, you've got it up there with you,
yes.
okay.
What I have is a large-scale plastic model of what I use the term cartridge. So a cartridge is going to refer to a single piece of unfired ammunition. So when all of the pieces are still together, that's called a cartridge. Now, once the cartridge is loaded into the firearm, the trigger is pulled, several things are going to happen. So one of the things that's going to happen is that a firing pin is going to strike in this gray area here and leave an indentation. So this is called the primer, and it's located here on the head of the cartridge case. Also, the cartridge case is where the gunpowder is housed. So inside this cup is where all of the gunpowder would be in the cartridge case, and once that primer is struck here, that's what ignites the gunpowder inside of the cartridge case. So when this is all together and that gunpowder has been ignited, what's happening is pressures are building up inside of this cartridge case, and when that pressure becomes too much, that's what pushes the bullet out of the cartridge case and forces it down the barrel of the firearm. So the bullet is then the projectile that's leaving into the firearm, and the cartridge case, in some instances, will be ejected from the firearm, or if we're talking about a revolver, it would remain in the firearm until manually ejected. And as this ammunition, both the cartridge case, including the primer portion, and the bullet are interacting with the firearm is imparting the information that I'm going to be looking at to make those comparisons and make those conclusions about whether this bullet was fired from the same, firearm, or whether the cartridge case was fired from the same firearm as other cartridge cases or from a particular firearm.
Now, how do you go about actually doing that examination if you're sent a cartridge or spent cartridge to a firearm?
So if I receive a fired cartridge case and a firearm, the first part of my analysis is going to be looking at what are called class characteristics. So class characteristics are measurable features of the specimen that indicate a restricted or a more limited group source. So class characteristics are things that are predetermined by the manufacturer. They're design factors that happen, they're decisions that are made by the manufacturer before the manufacturing process begins. So, for instance, I like to use the analogy of class characteristics. If you had to go out to the parking lot and you're looking for a blue Ford F-150. Well, the color blue is a class characteristic. It's an F-150, that's a class characteristic. You know you're looking for a truck. So we're able to quickly narrow down what we're looking for, because anything that's red, that's not our class characteristic. We don't need to consider that. Anything that's a car, sedan, that's not a class characteristic we're interested in. So class characteristics take the larger group and help us narrow it down. So as far as when I'm looking at a fired cartridge case, some of those class characteristics can be, for instance, the caliber. If I have a 9mm cartridge case, well, is my firearm also 9mm, or is my firearm 45 caliber? Well, if they're both 9mm, then the class characteristics agree. I should investigate this further. But if, the class agreement is not there, then the 9mm cartridge case was fired from a 45 caliber, because the class don't agree. So some other things on a cartridge case that are class characteristics would include the type of marks that are left on the primer. Sometimes they can be like parallel lines, sometimes they're arcing lines. So all of those would be things I would look at, and also the shape of the firing pin is a common class characteristic to look at as well. So some of the common shapes that we see for the firing pins could include an elliptical shape or also a circular shape. So sometimes the primer will have a rectangle, but we would know that anytime if the primer is a rectangle, then surely it wasn't fired from something that's indicating a circular, because those are two different class characteristics. So the class characteristics are my first level of analysis. Like I said, if the class are in agreement, then I will move on to the second level, which are called individual characteristics. Now, the individual characteristics are the marks that are caused by the irregularities and the imperfections on the tool surface. So those can occur incidental to manufacturing, or also after the gun has been produced. There might be damage to the gun, or corrosion, or just using the firearm can all influence those individual characteristics. So it's the individual characteristics that allow me to take that larger class group source and then look at those microscopic imperfections that are imparted onto the ammunition that allow me then say, yes, this was fired from the same firearm, or no, they were fired from different firearms.
Now, when you're just sent cartridge casings themselves, are you able to just take those and determine whether or not those casings came from one gun?
Yes, even when I do not have a firearm for comparison, I can still take multiple fired cartridge cases and compare them to each other on my comparison microscope, which my microscope allows me to have like a left stage and a right stage. So I basically put, a piece of evidence on my left stage, a piece of evidence on my right stage, and when I look through my eyepiece, I'm seeing both of those items side by side under lighting and magnification. So yes, I can compare multiple fired cartridge cases to each other under my comparison microscope.
And basically determine that those casings came from one particular firearm.
If that is the scenario, yes, I can decide, yes, if those individual characteristics I'm seeing, if they're in agreement, then they were fired from the same firearm. But if I'm seeing either class or individual characteristics that are not in agreement, then I would have to conclude they were not fired from the same firearm.
Perfect. Now, are the methods and processes that you take at the ATF, are they reliable?
Yes, and these are the same, these are common in the field of firearms identification to use these processes that I'm talking about, and I use similar processes to do these comparisons both at the GBI and at the ATF.
Now, can someone with the same training and background conduct the same testing and come to the same result?
So all of my testing is actually physically looked at by a second examiner, and that second examiner with the training and experience has to look at the evidence themselves microscopically, and they also reach conclusions. And so before a report can even be issued, 2 examiners with the training and experience have looked at that and concluded the same things.
Now, is that just the peer review process?
So we actually have multiple levels. First step is once I'm finished with the physical comparison of the evidence, it goes through a process called verification. And that's where that second examiner will take the physical evidence and also look at it on their microscope. And then after they reach their conclusions, then I can put together all of my paperwork, and then it moves on to a technical review process. During the technical review process, another examiner is looking over all of the data that I recorded and all of my photographs and my report to make sure that everything I have assembled for the case file supports the conclusions that I am reporting. In addition to that, it also goes to another process of administrative review where a supervisor will look over the whole case file as well, more for administrative, but they can also call into question anything at that time as well.
Perfect. So I want to direct your attention to this case here. Did you perform a firearms examination in this case?
Yes, I did.
Now, what type of testing were you requested to do?
I received 3 9mm caliber cartridge cases and 1 9mm firearm, and I was asked to compare those cartridge cases to that firearm.
And were you able to do that in this case?
Yes.
Now, before we get further, I'm going to show you what's already been admitted into evidence. State's Exhibits 602, 602, 603, and 604. Do you recognize these exhibits?
Yes, I recognize these exhibits. Each of the packages has a label with the ATF case number that I created that has also the item number and my initials on it.
And are these the 9mm casings that were submitted to the ATF for testing?
Yes.
Now, now I'm going to show you 607. Do you recognize 607?
Yes, the package for Exhibit 607 also has the ATF case number label with the item number and my initials on it, as well as I recognize my initials on the trigger guard of the firearm. And additionally, there's a package in the gun box that are the test fires that I created with this firearm.
Now, is this the firearm that was submitted to the ATF for testing for comparison against these casings found in 602, 603, and 604?
Yes.
All right. Now, I may have already asked, were you able to conduct an analysis of these casings to this firearm?
Yes, I did.
And were your findings reduced to a report?
Yes.
I'm now going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 670. Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, Exhibit 670 is a copy of the report I issued in this case.
So is this just your report?
Yes, it is.
At this time, the state moves to enter what's marked as State's Exhibit 670 into evidence.
670.
670, yes, Judge.
Is there any objection?
And Judge, we have the same objection as we did on the DNA. It's okay to tender it, but we don't want it to go back to court.
So the court will admit it over objection. We will address any issues with what the court sees at the end of the case.
Thank you, Judge. May we publish?
Yes.
Now, starting with your report, what is this header up here?
That header is an indication that it was received first at the ATF's Washington lab in Beltsville, Maryland.
And then down here, what's found in this kind of top right corner of the document?
The date of the report is the date that I issued this report. The case number is a case number that is assigned when the evidence arrives at the ATF laboratory. The submission is, there apparently were multiple packages that were submitted, so this being the third. The reference number is the ATF investigative number, so that's another ATF number, but it's separate from our laboratory case number. The title is a title that comes in on the form when they submit it, and then the type of exam is indicating that they want firearm analysis done.
Now, as to a location of this evidence and where it came from, is that listed here as title?
I do not know if that would be consistent with that information.
Was that information just provided to you and then added into your report?
Yes, that is, when the evidence is submitted to the lab, there is a standard form that they fill out, and the title of the investigation is something that would be received on that paperwork into the laboratory.
All right. Now, down here under exhibits, what exhibits in particular were you sent for testing?
So all of these items, the first three lines being the individual 9mm cartridge cases, and the final fourth line being the ZEV Technologies Model OZ9 9mm pistol. All of those items listed there are the ones that I compared for this case.
And just for the record, can you read out the serial number of the firearm?
The serial number is ZA04909.
Now, for the court, can you describe the process that you you took when you did your comparison of these
Sorry.
cartridge casings to themselves, then to the firearm?
So yes, the first thing I did was take each of the 9mm fired cartridge cases and put those on my microscope and compare those three to each other. After I did that comparison, then I made 2 test fires with the firearm, and then I took the test fires, which also would then be fired bullets and cartridge cases, and I compared those test fires to the group of 3 other cartridge cases.
Now, when it comes to the firearm itself, how do you do that comparison to these cartridge casings?
So the first thing I do is make test fires using the firearm. So in this instance, I took the ZEV 9mm pistol, and we have a large metal water tank. So as the name implies, it's a large tank. It's filled with water, and then on the front side of it is a port, and in that port is where I insert the firearm. And when I fire the firearm, the bullet goes down into the water, and the water serves to slow the bullet down. And then as I'm test firing it,
My earbuds died, is what happened. And I switched earbuds and I accidentally paused the video.
the cartridge case is ejected into a net that surrounds that port. So then I'm able to collect those samples because I have now shot this firearm myself. So I know that bullet I'm collecting, these cartridge cases I'm collecting.
Wait. I like being able to pause it from here. That's cool.
Those are representative samples of the marks this particular firearm is making. So once I have, kind of the apples to apples comparison, now I have, the cartridge cases test fired, and I have the evidence from the scene. I can then compare the test fired cartridge cases to those 3 scene cartridge cases.
Now, in some, the 3 9mm cartridge casings that you were submitted, were they fired from the same firearm?
Yes, first I determined that those 3 9mm cartridge cases were all fired from the same firearm.
Now, after conducting those test fires from the ZEV Technologies Model OZ9 9mm pistol, did you compare those test fires to those 9mm casings?
Yes, I did.
Now, what were your results?
I also determined that those 3 cartridge cases were fired from that ZEV Technologies Model OZ9 9mm pistol.
And is that notated here under your results and examinations?
Yes, the first line stating a conclusion, which is actually the second line, says the exhibit 9 through 11, which are our ATF numbers, the exhibit 9 through 11 cartridge cases were identified as having been fired in the exhibit 12 firearm.
Now, after you came to your specific results, was your findings peer reviewed?
Well, first the term we use is verification. So yes, after I have recorded my conclusions and my analysis notes, I then pass that off to the second examiner, who then does the physical comparison of the evidence as well.
And after it went through that process, was your report approved?
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Agent Horowitz. Attorney Murray, you may proceed with cross.
Thank you. Were you asked, Ms. Kelly, to do anything else with this firearm other than to test the cartridge cases?
No, sir.
Okay, do you know if anybody at the crime lab looked for any trace evidence on the butt of this gun?
Part of my analysis does include recording whether there was any trace evidence that was visible to me. I'm not a trace examiner, but I would not know if a specific trace analyst looked at this firearm or not.
Okay. And you were not asked to make any determination about muzzle to target distance or anything of that nature.
No,
You didn't have any of that information. The only other question that I have is when you fire this weapon, it ejects the cartridge, correct?
yes.
In this particular type of weapon, how far would this bullet or this cartridge be ejected from the weapon?
I wouldn't be able to answer that. Like I said, when I create my test fires, there is a net that is stopping it from traveling any further. And the distance that it could travel obviously would vary between different types of firearms. And I would say possibly often it's the case that cartridge cases are not recovered from where exactly, because when I do shoot in a range, they're prone to roll, bounce, it could be several reasons why cartridge cases, once they're collected on a scene, are not in the area they would have been if they had only just been ejected from a firearm and then stopped there.
But normally if you find them in a cluster, then you can pretty much tell where the person may be standing at the time the weapon was fired.
That wouldn't be part of my analysis if other people wanted to draw conclusions about that.
Maybe somebody else that might look at that particular area.
It's possible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Attorney Barry. Any comments? Any follow-up?
None from the state, Judge.
Okay, Ms. Benzie, excuse?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, so Ms. Benzie, thank you.
That was,
The second time I did it on purpose.
You can call your next witness.
at this time,
First
State
time I
Police
didn't.
Sergeant Jeff Inman.
How late are they going tonight? Jeez. Almost 5 o'clock.
Thank you for raising your right hand. You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the court on the issue now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, it is.
Well, see, if you would please state and spell your true and correct legal name for the record.
Spell the microphone too.
Okay, you have a seat, and then you can, please state and then spell your true and correct legal name for the record.
My name is Sergeant Jeffrey Inman, J-E-F-F-R-E-Y-I-N-M-A-N.
Thank you. May I proceed?
All right, Sergeant, how are you employed?
I am a sergeant with the Sandy Springs Police Department.
How long have you been with the Sandy Springs Police Department?
I'm one of the original officers that started on July 1st, 2006.
So since 2006, have you been post certified?
I have been. I started with Fulton County in 1997.
So since 1997, you've been post certified? Now, I want to direct your attention to November the 19th, 2021. Were you on duty that morning?
I was.
In what capacity?
I was one of the patrolman supervisors, sergeants that were on the road.
Now, did you respond to 90 Cameron Glen Drive?
I did.
And is that in Sandy Springs?
It is, it is.
Now, why were you responding to that area?
We got a burglary in progress call that came out. So I started heading that way, and we got a second burglary in progress call that came out in the same location.
Now, around what time did you respond to that location?
And it was around 9 o'clock in the morning.
When you arrived to that location, what did you observe?
When I arrived at the location, we had Officer Bibbs was getting a pepperball launcher out of his trunk of his car.
5 a.m.
The owner was out in the driveway, at the end of the driveway near the road. I walked into the house. We had about 8 officers that were in there. Sergeant Roush was standing at the bottom of the staircase, talking to somebody at the top of the staircase. Sergeant Petruska was in the process of getting some equipment, I believe it's a ballistic shield. And since I was the third sergeant that arrived on scene, they were busy, I took control of the situation.
Now, while were you physically inside the house?
I was, yes.
And, where in the house were you when Sergeant Roush was having a conversation with the person upstairs?
I initially walked around the main floor, checking to make sure that we had enough personnel that was in the house. I then walked over towards the front door to make sure that we had a perimeter set up on the house. Be making sure that nobody can get out of the house without our knowledge.
Now, at some point, did an individual come downstairs?
Yes, he did.
How were they dressed?
They were dressed in camouflage, military style outfit.
Now, were officers equipped with body camera?
Yes, they were.
Now, I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 672. Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
And this is off of Sergeant Roush's body cam.
In
Sorry, what was whose body cam?
Sergeant Roush.
Could you spell this one? If you can.
RAUSHE, I believe it is.
You and me both,
And,
Junior.
is this a screenshot from the body camera of the man coming down the stairs?
It is, yes.
And is it a fair depiction of that recorded on the body camera?
Yes, it is.
At this time, the state moves to enter what's marked as State's Exhibit 672 into evidence.
No objection,
State 672 is admitted.
What was
Now,
that?
what we're seeing here in State's Exhibit 672, is this a picture of when the man is coming downstairs?
Yes, it is.
All right. So now, once he comes downstairs, then what happens?
At this point, I'm over towards the front door to the home. As the individual was coming downstairs, Sergeant Roush had made a rapport with him, so they were talking and was trying to convince him to come downstairs. I heard a commotion behind me, and I turned around, and the individual that was coming down the stairs was basically coming off of the second or third step with his arm raised, coming down at Sergeant Roush, and basically looked like he was in the process of trying to hit Sergeant Roush.
Now, when you saw the defendant looking or attempting to hit Sergeant Roush, what happened after that?
Sergeant Roush raised his arms to block the attack. They started to struggle. They moved into the living room area, and they then went over the back of a couch. At this time, we're now converging in to help Sergeant Roush. And Sergeant Roush is also screaming at the same time. When they got down at the middle of the couch, they basically were kind of intertwined, and they started to roll. When they started to roll, I saw that it was a knife, a small katana knife looking. The individual was then stabbing Roush. I sat there and I yelled out, "Somebody shoot," as I'm drawing my weapon. I had a split second where I had a window. I fired one round, and Sergeant Truska fired one round, pretty much simultaneously. Sergeant Truska hit the subject in the chest. I hit the subject in the neck, and the subject then stopped what he was doing and dropped the knife. I then yelled for somebody to handcuff him as I'm reholstering my weapon. I then moved in with Officer Matt Williams and started handcuffing, and then the individual started fighting it. And we finally got him handcuffed. We separated Sergeant Roush from him, and Officer Mike Blythe then started treating Sergeant Roush for his wounds. We then carried the individual outside of the house to the front lawn, where we could then start treating his wounds.
Now, when separated, part of treating the defendant's wounds was that was kind of tearing off his clothes, part of that rendering of
it was, yes.
Now, I want to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 674. Do you recognize State Exhibit 674?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
It's out on the front lawn of the house where Sergeant Manny is cutting off the individual's clothes.
And is this a fair and accurate screenshot from one of the body cameras of the incident that was taking place in that front yard?
It is, yes.
At this time, the state moves to enter what's marked as State's Exhibit 674.
Any objection? I'm sorry. Okay, State 674 is admitted.
May I call the judge?
Yes.
All right. Now, do you remember how many layers the defendant was wearing?
Yeah, several layers of clothing that needed to be cut off.
Do you remember there being any broken glass at the house?
I do not recall any broken glass in the house, no.
Now, after that incident, let me backtrack. Do you recognize the same individual in this courtroom today?
Can we move the monitor?
He doesn't look the same now.
That appears to be him.
In describe article clothing too. Sorry, I apologize.
I'm sorry, the gentleman in the yellowish green shirt.
Yeah, with the chain around his waist.
Now, before he was shot, the individual seen in State's Exhibit 674, were you able to see his face?
I was able to see his face when he was out on the lawn, yes.
Why couldn't you see his face when he was inside the house?
When it started out, my back was torn to him. When he came off the stairs and started tapping Sergeant Roush, he also had a hat on, which I believe it had maybe had face covering on it. The situation was when he attacked Roush, they were together and down, so I did not see his face until he was actually taken outside.
In State's Exhibit 674, is this his face covering here?
Yes.
So in addition to the face covering and the military, was he wearing anything on his hands?
He was wearing gloves on his hands.
Okay. And then on top of the mask, was he wearing something on his head?
And it was what in the military we call a beanie hat, a full brim hat around that they use for best describing was for reconnaissance units that would wear that.
Nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Barry, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Did you ever take a statement from Matthew while you were on the scene there?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay, did he say anything to you of any significance?
He uttered some statements while I was in the process of handcuffing him, yes.
And what were those statements?
He called us several names. One of the names was, he called us the N-word. He called us pussies. Those are the two main ones that I do recall. And I do recall him screaming and yelling at the same time.
Okay. Did he indicate to you why he had gone to that house?
No, I didn't.
Did you see what automobile he arrived in?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Nobody pointed out to you the vehicle where it might be sitting?
Not at that time, because what happened was when I got to the scene, I was in control of the scene. So I was not there to interview the subject. I was there to get the subject out of the house.
Monitor what was going on there.
Yes.
Did you have any other involvement with Matthew after that?
I did not know.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Aiden Horowitz, any additional questions to Sergeant Inman?
No, Judge.
All right, we're just going to say excuse.
Yes, Judge.
Right, your excuse are removed.
Thank you.
Right, I think it's a natural ending point, as right about 5 o'clock. Before we adjourn for the evening, is there anything that we need to put on the record, any procedural concerns or issues?
Not that I know of at this point here.
No, Your Honor. Right, so we'll open the courtroom about 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning for you all to be able to come in and get ready, and we'll start back at the end of the state, ready for your next witness at 9 a.m.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good afternoon, good evening, everyone, please be safe.
Okay, guys, I guess that is it for today. I will see you again tomorrow at 8 for more Chandler Hallerson and at 10 for more this trial. And I guess that's everything. Who was the picture? The guy at the top of the stairs, that was the defendant right before he attacked the cop. And the guy on the lawn was the defendant after they shot him. Yeah, his hair looked a lot lighter. A lot lighter. Oh. Yeah. It got boring after the parents and not interrogation, interview, whatever. Because it was all the sciencey people after that this afternoon. And I know the science stuff is important and you have to have it to convict someone, but it's the most boring part of the trial. Yeah, they shot him in the chest and the neck because he attacked the cop that went to arrest him with a knife. And the cop said, somebody shoot him. I think I put that in my notes. Yeah, somebody shoot. So the other two cops, when they got a window to shoot, they both shot. One got him in the neck, one got him in the chest. So, I think there's something wrong with this kid. Like, mentally, I don't understand why he's not in a hospital, why he's on trial for murder and not in a hospital. I mean, not that I'm soft, like, not that I think he needs to get off at all. No, he's absolutely needs to be locked up somewhere, but I'm not sure he's with it at all. He's like a zombie sitting over there. I don't know what's up with this dude. So, okay, well, until tomorrow, guys, be kind to people, love your family, and Jesus loves you, and so do I very much. Bye, guys. See you tomorrow.